What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal.
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go!
Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. But that's right, your boy EJ does 2 live streams per day, talking sports, talking pop culture. It can take you many of ways. It can go to hip-hop music, which we'll talk about later. We'll go to wrestling, which we'll talk about later. We also talk superheroes, movies, television, wherever the case may go. Reality TV in particular. All different places we go with this man. We have a lot of fun with this. Ray Jarvis, you can see at the bottom of the screen there, he will be joining the show a little bit later to talk about the J. Cole album. Really excited about that, so that's going to be a ton of fun. But we'll also have plenty of stuff to get to prior to that. We got to talk about the latest with Aaron Rodgers. Apparently, we're getting a lot of word that perhaps this idea that he was going to be coming towards the end of his career, as a great Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. Seems like Aaron Rodgers could indeed be making a return to Pittsburgh. We'll see what a timetable is. Obviously, they're going to give Rodgers as much time as he wants to try to make that decision. But, you know, if you remember that last game, he played the playoffs. You heard Troy Aikman, you heard Joe Buck. They went into that game after talking to him and just hearing the word with the impression that this was possibly his last game that he played against the Houston Texans in the wild card round. Turns out now that may not be the case, so we'll give you the latest on that. Also, a lot of weird, bizarre kind of NBA stuff coming out today. There was reports, obviously, about coming just maybe a couple hours ago, maybe an hour ago, that Mark Cuban, the former owner of the Dallas Mavericks, who I think still has some kind of role with the team, not that he's running the team, but that he's kind of still around, maybe still getting bread from them, he apparently wants back in. He apparently wants to potentially buy back the Dallas Mavericks team that he sold to Patrick Dumont and the Dumont family. How that's going to go, I don't know. How possible is that? I don't know. But that is apparently the reports that are out today, so we'll break that down. We also got some word about NBA expansion could be coming our way soon, and a vote is expected this summer. And we have 2 teams that right now are the leaders in the clubhouse for who they want to see potentially become new NBA teams, or in one situation, an old NBA city becomes a new NBA city. So we'll talk about that as well. We also got to talk about some tanking stuff. Apparently, the NBA competition committee is seeing what's happening with the league right now and saying that we got to figure out something because this tanking thing's getting out of control. And one of the new things I didn't expect we would have come into the fray is the idea of trading for injured players. But the Washington Wizards said, hey, you think you know how to tank? Well, challenge accepted. Watch what we do this year. We will trade for injured players and just never let them come back. And apparently that has gotten the eyeballs of the NBA. So we'll get to that. We'll also get into some college basketball stuff. There was actually some really interesting stuff that happened over the weekend. There was some great games. The Carolina Duke game was phenomenal. And while the game was great, it was a Carolina comeback. And I talked about this draft class since I started this show. You saw Caleb Williams, you saw Cam Boozer, you saw why people are so excited about these young players that will be coming into the NBA next year. And then you had just an awesome college basketball game to boot. But the storyline came out of it, which was that concept and the argument around court storming, because John Shire made some comments about some of the attacks that his players were under because of the fact that they were allowed to storm the players, the Carolina fans were allowed to storm the court. And I posted this on social media. I want to bring it to the show. I think I have some rules that I think can be put in place that will not at all ruin the spirit of court storming and field storming when we talk about college football, but I think will allow for everyone to be more prepared in these scenarios when a court or field storm happens, and to not allow court stormings and field stormings to feel so arbitrary that they could happen at any moment, even when they don't make sense. Because let's be real, North Carolina storming their own court against Duke in basketball is outrageous. So, again, we're going to get to that as well. Again, Ray Jarvis joins us later in the show. So, we got a lot of stuff to do, man. This is 40 Days, 40 Nights. Thank you guys for rocking with me this evening. Of course, streaming live, multiple avenues. Okay, if you want to catch me on YouTube, New Generation Media is where we're streaming right now, live on YouTube. We're also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart, as well as streaming live on Instagram. At least I think I am. There we go. I hit the button. Streaming live on Instagram as well. Action EJ is where you'll find me on Instagram. So, again, really excited about this show. This is going to be an absolute good one. Of course, if you missed any of these episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights as we enter night 21, all episodes do get podcasted to our podcast channel. I think I'm just realizing, I don't know if I actually, did I publish this today's? I think I did, actually. Today was a blur. I got to give a major shout out to my guys, Bart Winkler and Carlos Ortiz. Of course, they were on Thursday night, and they did a great job talking Super Bowl and talking Marvel and talking a bunch of stuff. We kind of completed the home and home of me then joining Bart Winkler and Carlos Ortiz, formerly of Infinity Sports Network, but now of the Into the Winklerverse podcast YouTube channel. I was on there this week, earlier this afternoon, and we were talking Super Bowl, talking a bunch of stuff, and it was a ton of fun. So because of that, I've done now, this is technically the third show I'm doing today. I'm usually doing 2 shows a day. Today I'm doing 3. So I'm a little all over the place. I think it should be up, though. If it's not, I'll post it right after. But day 21, my podcast and episode live stream from earlier today, where we talked so much about the Super Bowl. We talked about the halftime show. We talked about some other things going on in sports. But we broke down the game up, right, left, center. All of that is on our podcast channel. So if you missed that one, you can always catch it. Just search New Generation Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, it's also up on our YouTube page as well as the whole video is out. But if you can't watch it, if you're on the go, if you're working out, if you're on the train, whatever the case may be, you could always go to the New Generation Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts, and you get all episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights. So this is going to be a fun one. Can't wait to get it started again. Ray Jarvis will join us at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time. But let's get to some of the reporting on Aaron Rodgers that I alluded to earlier. So Aaron Rodgers played this season. A lot of the conversation and stuff he said that when he was talking to Pat McAfee leading into the season, that he was expecting this to be a one and done, that this was essentially going to be his last ride, 1 year playing for the Steelers. He talked about how much he loved playing for Mike Tomlin and this idea that he had the opportunity to play for a coach that he respected. He went out there, he played relatively okay. They made the playoffs. They lost in the first round, which is basically Steeler football. You play relatively well, you play good enough to make the playoffs, and you lose in the first round. And this was the Aaron Rodgers experience for them. Much a better experience for Pittsburgh than it was for the New York Jets. I can say that for sure. He didn't cause many waves. He didn't cause many negative headlines. And, he battled some injuries, but, nothing that kept him off the field for long term. So now the question becomes, is he indeed going to retire? Again, when Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were doing the game, as that game got out of hand in that postseason game against the Texans, the last things you were hearing from them were saying, listen, all we can say is the indication we feel, hearing just everyone in the building, I guess, talking to Aaron, is that, this could be his last game. So I think a lot of the people in sports and a lot of people who just followed the Steelers, I think we all kind of took that at face value. So, okay, well, he said before the year he was going to be done. Then you had this season go down, and he didn't suffer major injuries, but, he broke his hand, and he had a bloodied up nose in one of the games, and you kind of realized, hey, this is an older guy who still can play a little bit, but is limited with his physical capabilities because of his age. It might make sense for him to bow out, even if he can probably push it a year or maybe 2 years if he really, really wanted to and take that risk. So I kind of was assuming that we were going to see the end of Aaron Rodgers after that game. Again, turns out now that might not be the case. I want you to hear from Tom Pelissero. This was, I believe, Saturday night prior to it might have been even Sunday morning, but this was over the weekend, and talking about the chances of Aaron Rodgers' return to the Steelers. Apparently, they are increasing.
Rodgers has not yet informed the Steelers whether he will return for a 22nd NFL season. But my understanding is the odds are increasing. I am told Rodgers has spoken several times with new Steelers coach Mike McCarthy, who, of course, helped Rodgers develop into a 4-time MVP and a Super Bowl winner in Green Bay. Rodgers also has spoken with wide receiver DK Metcalf, who wants Rodgers back at age 42. The plan is for Rodgers to take a little bit more time, and everyone hopes comes to a decision prior to the start of free agency in mid-March. Now, this is Aaron Rodgers, Mike. Only he knows ultimately where this is going to go. If he's going to come back, they need to work out a contract. But at this point, it would not be a surprise if Rodgers is back in Pittsburgh.
So Pelissero is saying Rodgers being in Pittsburgh, playing another season, definitely not a surprise at this point in time, given the fields that the odds are increasing that he will indeed make a return. You also heard him in that soundbite talk about how there are players on this team and people around this team that want Aaron Rodgers back. You had Adam Schefter, who was on Pat McAfee today, who also expressed that same sentiment.
When they had the exit meetings with the Pittsburgh Steelers players, almost to a man, they all wanted Aaron Rodgers back. And the one thing that was conveyed to me was how much respect and love there was from other teammates about Aaron Rodgers and how much they wanted him back. And the idea at that point in time was to give him about a month, give him some time to think about things, process things. And in that time, they go and hire Mike McCarthy. Now, they didn't hire Mike McCarthy to bring back Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think that hurts the situation at all. If anything, it helps it. And so, obviously, Aaron Rodgers has to decide what he wants to do, but I think the Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely would love to have him back and would welcome him back.
So, a lot of momentum, I feel like, that is moving towards the direction of Aaron Rodgers coming back to play football with the Pittsburgh Steelers for at least another season, playing under Mike McCarthy. And you heard Schefter say it. I heard a lot of folks say this as well, in terms of people that are reporting on the Steelers situation, that they didn't necessarily hire Mike McCarthy because they thought that he was going to be able to convince Aaron Rodgers to come back, but they knew it wouldn't hurt to hire Mike McCarthy, knowing the relationship he had with Aaron Rodgers. Now, I had been skeptical. I think I said on this show, I felt like the last time these guys were working together, Aaron Rodgers was reportedly trying to get this guy fired. And Aaron Rodgers reportedly thought this guy was kind of a moron. That's the reporting. Don't shoot me, Aaron Rodgers. Don't call me fake news. I'm just saying what people who were apparently close to the scene were saying that was the relationship between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. Now, in the subsequent years past, these guys being colleagues, they both speaking glowingly against each other. I think, like any relationship sometimes, time heals all wounds, and you still have to think about the good times and not so much the bad times. And Mike McCarthy has spoken glowingly about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has spoken glowingly about Mike McCarthy. Perhaps both parties having dealt with other chaotic situations and situations a lot worse than dealing with each other. When you talk about Mike McCarthy dealing with Jerry Jones and the Cowboys and Aaron Rodgers dealing with the New York Jets fiasco, perhaps that makes you realize, hey, you know what? Maybe that guy wasn't so bad. Maybe I had things that wasn't as off-putting as maybe I thought it was, and maybe it puts things in a different light and different perspective. That's certainly possible. I will say that I think this might be the worst case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward with how this whole offseason is shaking out, if this is indeed where the momentum is going. If Aaron Rodgers is going to come back for another year where the Steelers are once again going to be stuck in limbo and they will not have a capability to either win a Super Bowl or be bad enough to really start a real rebuild, then they're continuing to push forth the inevitable, which is they're going to fall apart anyway, and they're going to eventually hit this tank because it happens to everybody. Maybe say, well, it never happens to the Steelers. Well, get ready, buddy, because if you keep relying on older veteran-type players who are going to be high-priced guys, eventually those guys are going to get older, and you do not find your answer at quarterback, then get ready for 5-13 or 5-12, and a high draft pick soon enough is going to come anyway. Maybe it'll come even this next year. Who's to say that Aaron Rodgers trying to push it another year goes out there and maybe he falls off a real cliff. He's already not the player he was, but he certainly hasn't fallen off a cliff. Maybe the cliff is right there next year if he tries to go out and play, and maybe you end up winning 4 or 5 games, whatever. He's all right. We kind of tanked by accident. But I think the better likelihood is, considering Mike McCarthy, I think, is a pretty good NFL head coach, a pretty good play caller. I know I've said that a ton. And Aaron Rodgers showed that he could at least be functional as an NFL quarterback still. He can still make big plays. He can still have big games. And the Steelers, having the team that they have overall, still have T.J. Watt. I assume Cam Hayward's still going to play. And you still have, Ramsey and Porter. They still should be a pretty decent team. So if we're looking at, again, another 10-9 win season, maybe they lose, maybe they have an 8-win season, even if it's 8-9 or 7-10, I still think you're looking at that and say, what are we doing? We went out there with a 42-year-old quarterback, and we won 8 games or 7 games. Like, what's the goal here? What's the plan here? Mike Tomlin always had that adage that, it's the standard is the standard, and the standard is always supposed to be winning championships. The Steelers showed with Aaron Rodgers that they are not capable of winning a championship. They were not close. They played in an awful AFC. They played against a team that got eliminated in the next round, and a quarterback who was completely flustered and overwhelmed by the moment of playing in the postseason. They couldn't even beat those guys. And they got blown out. It wasn't even close. And now I'm supposed to suspect that Aaron Rodgers, a year older, with, I know, a not new head coach for him, but a different head coach. And maybe he's a better head coach for the Steelers in next year because maybe they'll be better offensively because McCarthy's better than Arthur Smith. That's possible. But all those other guys are also going to have to adjust to having a new coach in Mike McCarthy. So I'm supposed to suspect that Aaron Rodgers, a year older, a year removed from more injuries, getting beat up more, going into an AFC that was weak this past year, that almost by osmosis has to get better. You would think that the teams that had their playoff experiences this year that were a little ahead of the curve, like the Patriots, like the Houston Texans, like the Denver Broncos, you think those teams use this experience and maybe come back better next season. And then you have the reload years for the likes of the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens and the Bengals. Now you got to deal with those teams who missed the postseason because of injuries, because they just weren't as good as we thought we were going to be, and all other different excuses. Now they get another year to get another crack at you. The odds of this going better than it did this past season, I don't think are very high. So if realistically competing for a championship isn't on the table for the Steelers, even in the AFC that we don't think is as good as the NFC, then what are we actually doing here? What is the actual plan? I told a bunch of people, and I said this a ton of times, that I thought Mike McCarthy was being underrated as a head coach on this cycle. And I said, this is one of the few spots I didn't love him in, even though I understood the Pittsburgh ties and he's from Western PA. I got all that, but I don't want him as a retread on a team with a bunch of guys trying to go for a last hurrah, trying to go for a quote-unquote final stand. And that's what the Steeler season is going to be this upcoming year if you're running back Aaron Rodgers and much of this roster with the hopes that maybe you could put one final run together to go to a Super Bowl. Newsflash, that was supposed to be this past season with Mike Tomlin, who understood the assignment that was a last stand because once they didn't win, he said, all right, bro, I'm out. It seems like everyone else around there, Aaron Rodgers, the Rooney family, the front office, everyone else around there seemed to not get the hint because they also seem to want Aaron Rodgers back, and I don't really understand that either. And this is, I think, maybe where if I was a Steeler fan, I'd be a little concerned because I think this environment that they're creating, this narrative that they're pushing, it sounds a lot of the stuff I was hearing about the New York Giants and John Mara towards the end of Eli Manning's career. And that would scare me a ton because John Mara and the Giant organization in their front office, they in many ways I think put off replacing Eli Manning, getting a young quarterback, and really going to the tank to truly correctly rebuild to push Eli Manning's final years of his career, which we knew were a dub. They weren't going to win anything. And the Giants have this adage and this idea that they're above tanking, and therefore they've now, for the last 3 years in a row, have blown opportunities of getting potentially the number one pick in the draft because they thought winning meaningless games during the regular season was more important than putting yourself in a better position to be the highest draft pick possible in that upcoming draft for that year. The Steelers, if they really feel like they're above tanking and they'd rather be mid with Aaron Rodgers than bad for a year or two so that they can rebuild the team and get in the kind of players needed to really turn this thing around, then they're clueless. Then they're hopeless and they have no shot. And it's not anything against Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what he decides. I mean, if it's him, he wants to play. I'm not going to sit here and go crazy about him wanting to play. I don't think it will go that well because I think that Father Time catches to everybody. And I think that he's clearly a guy with diminished skills. But he didn't play so poorly where anyone who was being realistic about how he played said, oh, he definitely should retire. I think, he is what he is. If he's comfortable being kind of an average tier quarterback and a guy who can take a team to the playoffs, provided not go that far, if that's what he wants to end his career with, then more power to him. And I don't think that's an embarrassing way to go out. That's how he wants to go out. So I'm not even I know Mr. Bash Aaron Rodgers guy. I'm not going to bash Aaron Rodgers if he wants to play next year. He came in, I think, trying to keep expectations low, which I think was smart of him. You know, he didn't do so much of the McAfee stuff as much. Definitely did none of it during the regular season, which was smart. There were the rumors that he was trying to hold his decision so the Steelers didn't get all these primetime games. So I think he kind of maybe understand. I think he understands maybe they get better than most people that he knows kind of where he's at in his career. But I think he did have a lot of fun. I think he did enjoy working with this organization, this group. And I think he looked at the season and said, hey, man, I can still play. So what's the harm in going out there and playing some more? My other psycho theory on Rodgers real quick before we move on is I think what he's understanding as well, which is why he may be more inclined to push the envelope to play as long as possible, is those things like Jeopardy and these other opportunities, maybe a football commentator and all those other plans that he definitely wanted for himself. Aaron Rodgers is very interesting because he was a guy who he paints himself today as this kind of anti-establishment figure who was going against the man and who in all ways wanted to reject all the evils that came with fame and Hollywood and all those things. When the guy prior to that infamous press conference where he lied about taking the vaccine, he was all about that. He was dating the models and the athletes and dating the actresses, and he wanted to be sitting front and center at the Bucks games and all that stuff. He wanted to be, Mr. Celebrity. In many ways, I feel like so much of his story is this guy who was overlooked, overshadowed, and nobody believed it. And he had this, I think his origin story of being this kind of what at times seems like this bitter man was him sitting in that draft room expecting to be drafted way higher than he was, and the embarrassment of sitting there waiting until he finally got drafted by the Packers. And then he went to a team where his pseudo mentor basically stiff-armed him. I think that was the villain origin story of Aaron Rodgers began that day. But it really began beyond that. He went to community college because nobody wanted him as a D1 quarterback. So he has a lot of grievances. I mentioned how Sam Darnold is someone who doesn't air his grievances. He doesn't lead with his grievances for his career story, and that's very admirable. I think it makes him likable. Aaron Rodgers, similarly Baker Mayfield, total opposite. He leads with his grievances. He always has grievances. He always has people that he feels like have slighted him or done him wrong, and he has to get back at, right? That's what motivates him. And by the way, and when I posted my clip about Sam, that same clip, and I mentioned Baker Mayfield, I don't even mean that as a slight towards Baker or Aaron Rodgers. I always say this, especially with football athletes. Do whatever you got to do to motivate yourself. Does it mean I will like you or I will support you? That is another story. But I don't hold it against people if they need that little extra to get them through a grueling sport where they have 300-pound men trying to slam their heads into their bodies. Like, I do whatever you got to do. But I do think that's a big part of Aaron Rodgers' vibe, right? Is that, again, he's this anti-establishment guy and everybody else in the establishment rejected him. And I think the reality, though, is that's not what he wanted. I think he wanted to be loved. I think he wanted everyone to adore him. I think he wanted the fans to realize that he is a great player and he is, in his view, a great person and all those things, right? And everything that happened with the COVID vaccine stuff just turned everything on its head. And I know, because he talked about it kind of recently. Like, I think right before this past season, right? When he was on McAfee, he was still mentioning vaccine stuff. I'm like, what are we doing, man? We're past this. I think it bothers him. I think it hurts him. And I think now he looks at his life and he's like, that Jeopardy stuff and that, whatever career Michael Strahan's had and Tiki Barber has had, shout out to Tiki Barber and these other pro athletes that have been able to cross over and do multiple different things, be bigger than just football, which is something that he definitely sees himself as. I think he realizes a lot of that stuff is gone. I don't think that Jeopardy is calling him again. I don't think that any other game show. He's not like. I think he's a polarizing figure. I think that he's now pigeonholed himself and he's now stuck, kind of being on the fringe. He can only. And let me be clear, like, he's friends with Joe Rogan. Like, Joe Rogan's not on the fringe, right? Joe Rogan is an extremely popular podcaster. But outside of it, like his Joe Rogan and Pat McAfee's, I think he's more on the fringe. You look at the podcast he's doing with these other conspiracy theories and things like that. I think he realizes, like, oh, shoot, like, I probably burned all those bridges to becoming, the next Michael Strahan, which is what I wanted to become. And I could retire and just do ayahuasca all the time and just surf all the time and just be a guy in Malibu just chilling, which I think he would enjoy, but it's not deep down what he wanted. So I think he's still playing the game, and I think he's still interested in possibly continuing to play, even though there's no Super Bowl left for him to win, not with this team. Because if he leaves football, he kind of leaves public life. And then again, he said on Pat McAfee's show that when I retire, you're never going to see me again, and I can't wait. I think if you give that guy, instead of ayahuasca, if you give that guy real truth serum, I guarantee you that's not what he wanted. And I guarantee you, I still don't think it's what he wants. I think he's resigned to the fact that because people have doubted him and that they've put smut on his name and all these different things. I think he's come to that conclusion, and I think he's at peace with that. There's a difference between being at peace and liking it. I think he's at peace that is his reality that he's going to do, and that he would love to never have to see these people again who kind of ruined his life, I think he feels in his head. But it's not what he wanted. He wanted to be Mr. Jeopardy. He wanted to be Mr. Good Morning America. He wanted to get all the accolades and all the glory of being a celebrity and a star that he didn't get when he was coming up because he was overshadowed and overlooked. And then he had to sit on the bench for all those years. And then he became a megastar, and he got all of those accolades and stuff. And then right as his career was about to end, he was about to enter that world, it all got ripped away from him. And he's never going to let that go. He's never going to give that up. And I think that's why he may still want to keep playing. Interesting stuff. That's my psychoanalysis of Aaron Rodgers. I've been very loud about not being an Aaron Rodgers guy at all. I'm just not. I'm not about a lot of the stuff that he's about. So that's kind of here and there. But whenever I step to the mic, I always try to be fair. And if he wants to go out there and play, I wish him all the best. Yeah, I don't think it would go that great, but again, he played pretty well this year, better than I thought he would play, better than the Steelers I thought would do. So if he wants to go out there, go ahead. But I wonder if this is kind of him delaying a aspect of his life that I don't think he's looking forward to as much as he claims he is. Otherwise, why not go to it? If he retires, he can go away and be super rich and be fine. Why come back? I think a lot of those reasons are the reasons why. I want to shift gears here. I want to talk about this story that I thought was really interesting. So Duke and Carolina played. Marvelous game. A late Carolina comeback at home gets them the W. Carolina-Duke still matters in a way, at least for those schools, that is still really cool. Dean Dome atmosphere was awesome. The game was awesome. You see those teams, those names across the chest, and those colors, and it's still a vibe. Is it going to be what it was in '95 when Jerry Stackhouse is going reverse dunking on people, and Jeff Capel is shooting the ball from 50 feet out to send it to overtime? Is it going to be J.J. Redick and Tyler Hansborough and all those guys? No, it's never going to be that. College basketball is just different. How we consume media is different, but it's still really cool. But beyond the game, which was a great game and a borderline classic, you had kind of conversation outside the game, which was Carolina and their fans. They stormed the court after this W. And apparently, John Shire did not like that. When he addressed the media, he was so distracted about what happened with the court storming that he actually had trouble talking about the game.
For me, it's hard to talk about the game when I was most concerned just for the safety of our players after the game. Like, I don't want to make it about that because Carolina, they played a great game to win. And that's a heartbreaking loss for our team. I got staff members that got punched in the face. My family pushing people away, trying to not get trampled. And that's not what this game is about. And you give them all the credit in the world. It's not about the game. But obviously that was a scary ending. And that this rivalry is not about that.
So, from what I've seen on the internet, I've not seen video of Duke coaches getting punched. There's plenty of video of them clearly being pushed and shoved. It was tough getting out of the arena, and there was definitely a video. I think someone throwing looks like a water bottle or something at the Duke players and coaches. So I didn't see a punch. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I haven't seen anything. I think John Shire was asked about the condition of the coach today. He said that he should be fine from what I saw. But here's what I'll say on this. Number one, I'll get to the court storming stuff in that aspect of it no more. Number one, I will say this. John Shire learns from the best when it comes to making a game not about his team losing, but about something else that was an affront to the sport. Because this is right in the Coach K bag, and I've seen a lot of folks complaining about this, that John Shire, here we go, Duke again, complaining about something that's not about them losing. And Coach K was a master at this in a way that made him unlikable towards the end of his career, especially, where his team would lose, and instead he wants to make it about Dylan Brooks. And there was a game they played. Oregon played Duke in a tournament game, and Dylan Brooks is being Dylan Brooks. He's the exact same guy in the NBA that he was in college, and he's talking trash, he's doing all the other stuff, and on the layup in the handshake line, where typically just handshake guys, hey, good game, move on. Here's Coach K stopping the handshake line to hold Dylan Brooks and tell him, hey, like, you're a better player, you don't have to do that, you shouldn't do that, and all that stuff. And that was it. And then he goes in the press conference. He's like, "Oh, I didn't say that. I'm not what we're talking about." And Dylan Brooks is like, "No, yeah, he told me I was being a jerk or whatever." And Coach K has complained about court stormings, all these different other things when his team takes a loss that he wants to take issue with. And for a lot of college basketball fans, it became very annoying because again he seemed to want to make everything about something else instead of talking about, hey, why did your team lose? And John Shire learned from the best. He sat right next to Coach K for all those years. He played for Coach K. In fact, there were plenty of games probably John Shire played that they lost that Coach K in the press conference made it about something else because that's what he used to do. So Shire was kind of going in that bag, and that aspect of it I don't love. But if his staff is getting punched in the face, if that is true, and I know it was true that there were water bottle things being thrown into because I saw that on camera, then that also does need to be addressed. When do you address it? I don't know. Maybe you address it in the week, the next game pre-press conference. And you say, hey, I just want to talk about the last game real quick. I didn't want to take shine away from Carolina's win, but I wanted to get this out. Maybe that's what you do. I don't know. But that is the other side of this that I understand. But on the court stormings, it is completely absurd and outrageous that North Carolina is storming the court against Duke. Completely outrageous. They're your rival. You are a blue blood. And even this season, you're ranked in the top 15. All reasons to me why there should never be a court storming. And I've said this for years, and I posted it on social media. I think I got one pushback on it. But I've posted for years that I feel like we need to get a handle on court storming and field storming in a way that I think could make this a little safer. I am all for court storming and field stormings in college sports. I know they are dangerous. I know it's not great. And if they took it away tomorrow, I'm not going to, get pitchforks and march down to Indianapolis outside the NCAA offices or march to Charlotte outside the ACC offices. I'm not going to do that. But I do think that I understand when people say, hey, listen, this is what makes college sports great. This is part of the experience. And if you take this away, you do take away some of the element that makes college football great or college basketball great. I get that. And I think I have a solution to please everybody. At least please as close as possible to please everybody. Because I do think that something really bad may happen at some point, and then they might just cancel this thing because something bad really happens. Like someone gets really injured or really hurt, or it starts some kind of melee with the team. Like that, you get a mouse in the palace type situation, or again, a player getting injured by a fan because they take a swing at them or something. This whole thing is going away. So my thing is, let's try to do something to get ahead of that, so if you like this, you can have a lot of fun. And if you don't like it, you can say, okay, at least there are rules in place to maybe help everybody become safer. So here are a couple of my rules. Number one, the number one rule, like I said, you should never be able to storm the court or the field against a rival. To me, it is the antithesis of a rivalry. If you have a rivalry with an opponent, the assumption is you have this unbelievable hatred, and nothing but a win is acceptable, and therefore it is expected that you should beat your rival. Court stormings and field stormings happen when there's a euphoria of you doing the unthinkable or doing something that was surprising. You should never be surprised when you beat your rival. You should expect it. And yes, I know there are some sports where rivalries are kind of lopsided, right? Like if Oregon State plays Oregon in football, Oregon usually has the advantage. But it doesn't matter. It's a rivalry. Oregon State wants to and expects to find a way to beat Oregon every single year they do the Civil War. So you shouldn't be storming the field or storming the court if you beat Oregon. if you're Carolina, you shouldn't be storming the court for beating Duke. They're your rival. You should expect to beat Duke. It's utterly ridiculous that they would storm the court or storm the field. An unofficial rule I have, before I get to the other rules, is I think if you're a blue blood, you shouldn't ever storm the court in basketball or football. Like, if you're North Carolina, there's no opponent you can face where storming the court would be acceptable to me. You're the school of Michael Jordan, of Vince Carter, of James Worthy, of Jerry Stackhouse, of Phil Ford. I can go on and on and on of all the great players, Rasheed Wallace, like all the greats that played in North Carolina. It is the bluest of blue bloods we have in college basketball, maybe with the exception of Duke. And you're storming the court for who? For what? You're Carolina. You're the big dog. You're never the underdog. You're never the plucky, little engine that could. Those court stormings are for those schools. Those are for your Xaviers and your St. Mary's and your mid-majors. They're not for Carolina. What are we talking about? What are we doing? Again, you want to tell me, Maryland basketball wants to storm the court? Okay, sure. They won one title in their entire lifetime. You cannot be North Carolina and storming the court. You're one of the winningest programs in college basketball history. That's embarrassing in itself. So that's an unofficial rule. I don't know if that can really be put in a rule book. That, a blue blood can't. Like, what does that mean? So I can't make it a real rule. But just in terms of just that game that happened on Saturday, they should be shamed for storming the court. Like, North Carolina, that was completely Bush League. No excuse at all to storm the court ever when you're in North Carolina. That leads me to the other thing. Number 2. You cannot storm the court as a top 15 team, whether it's football or basketball. You're a top 15 team. That means you're really good. That means you have a shot to win a national title, which also means that the idea of storming the court or field suggests that you did something that was unthinkable and this is the biggest moment of your season, when in reality, there's a possibility that this is not going to be the biggest moment of your season. There's a possibility you could win a national championship. That'd be much bigger. So you storming the court as a top 15 team, I think is crazy. I almost wanted to go straight to top 25, but top 20, I think, you're 24, 23, you could be James Madison, right? Like, you could be one of these random schools that are that low, and those full schools, I would feel bad about them storming the court or field or whatever. I think that that's something that is fair, and I could understand. So I don't want to take those teams away, but if you're in the top 15, at that point, if you're that good, where you're one of the best 15 schools in the entire country in football or basketball, there is no excuse at all for you to be that surprised about coming up with a big win that you are storming the court or storming the field. None. Completely, utterly ridiculous. So that's my other thing with this, is I would ban all schools who are in the top 15 of their polls in that year from storming the court or field. If you're that good, you should never have to storm the court or field. I want to get to my last one here, and this one I think is maybe the most controversial. But I think it's when we go to safety, because you're realizing, okay, those are all fine, but what does that have to do with safety? None of those things help safety. Well, one, I would argue it limits court stormings. Like, if a place like North Carolina can't court storm, that's one place where you don't have places, people getting trampled, people getting punched, right? So I think it does affect safety, but yes, maybe for the actual court storming themselves, where you can bring in the safety in. This is where I come in. All court storming games should be predetermined the week of that game, or maybe the week prior, and you only get one. You can't have a situation where it's just random, where security doesn't know, police don't know, nobody has any idea what could happen, and all of a sudden there's 100,000 people on the field, or there's 15,000 people on a basketball court. Like, that is unsafe. That creates danger. And if we're gonna try to put some rules behind this, because this is all the thing I thought, like, do you hold people from storming in hopes that, like, you can get people off the court and then have them all storm at the same time? It might take away from the spirit of it, and I think you could probably do it, but it might take away from the spirit. It might kind of ruin it. So, okay, let's put that aside. I think if you make everything a big deal about, all right, you know what? We're calling our shot against Kansas this week. Kansas is coming in. Kansas is one of the top teams in college basketball, and I'm trying to think of a bad team in the Big 12. There aren't many. We're Colorado. And Kansas is coming in our crib. And they're a top 15, top 10 team or whatever. and we haven't beaten a top 25 team in X amount of years. We are determining this a court storm game. If we find a way to beat Kansas, we will storm the court, and we will allow the kids to do it. I think that tells Kansas in terms of, okay, let's bring maybe extra security guards, extra mechanisms in place to protect our guys. If that court storm does happen, we lose this game. It tells then the staff and the police at the school that they're declaring this, which means, okay, let's make sure we have mechanisms in place for if we win this game, we storm the court. Maybe as the game's expiring, maybe we start to get our security closer to their bench. Get security maybe circling their bench, right? Like we could put measures in place. You can get the local police to say, okay, hey, listen, this is a court storm game. We may want to have some extra officers on hand working this game so that we can make sure that we can keep the peace and not have a complete chaos. And I think, will it completely limit all interactions and all bad moments? No. But do I think that it could help quelch some of the bad moments where guys are getting ran over and punched and attacked and things like that? I think it would. I think the players would be fully aware, the coaches would be fully aware, the coaches could have, measures in place to be like, all right, we're about to lose this game. Let's send everybody to the locker room so we don't get hurt or anything like that. Now, this was a weird one with Duke Carolina, where that wouldn't have helped because it was a game where there was a last possession that would have made the difference or not. So, John Shire can't say, hey, bench, go to the locker room. Let's see if we hit this 3 to tie this game. But if we don't, we'll meet you there. You can't do that because if you tie the game, then you're going to bring them back out of the locker room. Like, that's ridiculous. So you're not going to solve everything. But I do think if Carolina, in theory, they would never be able to do this because you're playing a rival and you're a top 15 team. And I think have some shame as a blue blood. You should never do this. But I think if all those things work out the way they're supposed to, in theory, let's say it's not Carolina in that situation, I do think that maybe it allows everyone to be a little more ready. So I think these are pretty good rules. I think that if you did this, I think you'll have a ton of really awesome moments, awesome things in terms of people still being able to storm the court, storm the field. I think in terms of like we think about college game day and how cool it is when we learn where college game day is going to go and how much of a big deal it is just in the sports landscape, even if you're not part of these schools that are playing, just, oh, wow, college game day is there. That's going to be a really cool scene. That's a lot of fun. If you're in these college towns and at these games and outside these stadiums or on these campuses where they're doing college game day and it is just a zoo and it is a great atmosphere and there's 10, 15, 20, 30,000 people out there, it's an awesome time. Building that anticipation doesn't hurt college game day. Like, it's not like college game day just shows up to a place and says, oh, we're here, everybody show up, and then everybody bum rushes Lee Corso and Kirk Herbstreit and Pat McAfee, all those folks, right? Like, no, they announced prior to that week, hey, we're going here. Get ready. It's going to be a lot of fun. And people show up, and they have a lot of fun. But guess what? They have security. They have police. They have other people in place. They have everybody set up so that once everybody arrives, they can effectively celebrate college football the way they want to with their show. I look at this as the same. I don't think it hurts the game or hurts the spontaneity of court stormings or field stormings to be like, hey, we're designating this a court storm, field storm game. I think fans could have fun with that. They could make signs. They could maybe wear weird stuff to get ready for it. Like, I think that you could make this really cool. And on the flip side, I think for the team that's coming into that house, I think, how about you add a little juice? Be like, what? You're going to court storm on us? You're going to field storm on us? Get out of here, man. Watch this. I think it actually builds more excitement and anticipation for the games. I think it would be a lot of fun. I think, and the fact that you can go into a week and, like, again, Sports Center or Inside College Basketball or College Game Day or College Football Live or whatever, show you're watching, they could say this week, court storm game designated for when Arizona goes into, again, Colorado, right? I'm sorry, Colorado. I'm going to take a lot of shrapnel. I don't know. I'm trying to think of Big 12 is a good conference. There's not a lot of bad college basketball teams in this. It's arguably the best conference. So when I think college basketball, it's hard for me to figure out a rival, right? I don't want to go Arizona State because obviously that's a rival, and you should never, of course, on your rivals. I guess in theory I could do K-State for them. I used Kansas earlier, so I'll try not to use K-State. But yeah, K-State is someplace like that, right? Like, I think that would make this really cool. And I think it would make it cool for college football. If you imagine, like, you have a game day game that then also throws in, oh, by the way, this is also a field storm game if this team wins. I think that's great. But again, I think some ramifications. Like, I remember a couple years ago, like, Tennessee beat Alabama and they field stormed. I know it was the biggest win they had in years, and it was awesome. They beat Bryce Young. But they were ranked, like, in the top 10 or whatever. I just don't think Tennessee should be storming the field when you beat a fellow top 10 team. I don't think that makes sense, even if they're Alabama. So I think, again, Those are my rules. Can't court storm a rival. You can't court storm or field storm as a top 15 team. And I'm putting in place that they have to be predetermined prior to the week of the game, and you only get one opportunity. And I think that it's a different environment, different culture, but I think it would still build a lot of momentum, still build a lot of excitement for these games. And I think it would also keep people hopefully a little more safe. So that's why I think of this. CJ Stewart on this 40 days, 40 nights, night 21. I almost said EJ Stewart on the fan. That's become like my default every time I'm talking on the radio. So I have to always like catch myself sometimes. But Ray Jarvis will be joining us. He just sent me a text having some parenting issues. Nothing crazy, but I actually don't know, but you may know. You're dealing with young children, and sometimes things happen. So he'll be on. Obviously, we're coming up on 7 p.m., but he'll be up shortly. No worries about that. But he's dealing with something at this very moment in time. And that's all good because I want to keep the ball rolling. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the chat. I'm actually very curious. Like, how do you guys feel about court storming and field storming? Do you think that they're outdated? Do you think they need to be outlawed? Like, there are a lot of folks who do believe they should be outlawed. I don't want to see that because I just feel like it is a really awesome, cool thing about college sports. And to lose it completely, I think, would really suck. Again, is it going to destroy college football and college basketball if you can't storm the quarter field? No. But those images of when they do happen are really awesome. But I do understand how dangerous they are. I remember a game this past year where Virginia beat Florida State, which is very ironic because we actually learned that Virginia, as the season went on, was like 10 times better than Florida State. Like Florida State won 4 games this year, and Virginia was 1 game away from making the college football playoff as an automatic bid winning the ACC. So, but nonetheless, where they were ranked at that time, they already taken a loss, and then FSU had beaten Alabama to start the year, and this is like week 3 or week 4, so they're ranked in the top 10. People think that Florida State's really good now. At that time, it seemed like this was this massive upset. When we realized later it was not. But I remember that game, which I think ended in overtime. So it was one of those games where like the game ends on a final play. And Virginia has a very unique stadium. It's a really cool stadium. But there's like kind of this grassy field towards the end of one of the end zones where I think like kids kind of can just like stand. It's like a standing room area, it seems like. So like the ball gets thrown by Castellanos, quarterback for Florida State. It's incomplete. And there's like a receiver like in the end zone who like doesn't make the catch. And when I tell you, I can't tell you how many kids were there, but the kids just fly onto the field as soon as that ball hits the ground, knowing they win. And this guy who's on the ground, like I'm glad, obviously he's okay because we didn't hear anything about him getting hurt. But I was like, oh my God, that guy might get trampled. Like that's scary. Like all these crazy kids just start running onto the field, and he's only about 10 feet, 15 feet in front of these kids, so that ball hits the ground. He doesn't have that much time to get up and realize what's going on before he is mobbed by all these people. I see why people say, hey, listen, this probably isn't the best thing in college football. We might have to adjust this, because that's a thing that didn't end tragically or scary, but 100% could in theory. So I get the people who say, like, what's the point of this? But again, I also understand that it is an aspect of college football people enjoy. So if I was doing it, I would just put some rules in place to hopefully give them some ramifications, or rather some guidelines to try to make this thing as safe as possible. Again, it's EJ Stewart. You're watching 48 40 Nights. Before we get Ray Jarvis in here, I want to get one more story in here. And it involves tanking. So we've seen tanking evolve in the NBA, and they have tried all different kinds of things to curb tanking. The main thing being, hey, we're going to flatten the lottery odds a little bit to make it more random for who could win the lottery. So it maybe doesn't entice teams and say, hey, we have to have the worst record in order to get to the lottery and get the number 1 pick in the draft. And I don't know if it's worked. It has worked in terms of application, because we've seen like the Hawks and the Mavericks and the Pelicans, like teams that were not in position in past years to have really almost any shot to win the lottery and get the number 1 pick in the draft. Teams that didn't necessarily tank per se were getting number 1 picks. You're like, oh wow, look at that. Like they didn't really tank and they got the number 1 pick. All those teams that were losing all those games, like what were you doing? You wasted your time. So it worked in that regard. But did it stop teams from tanking? Not really. If your season's out of reach, teams still feel like I'll still take the better odds, even if they're flattened, than I would to keep trying to win games and it will hurt my chances of getting a top pick. And now tanking has evolved through what we've seen with certain trades and also how people are trying to protect picks they have that in theory could be traded to other teams. So this really centers around the Washington Wizards, where the Wizards, they come into this year where they made a trade years ago that gave the Knicks their first round pick. But the first round pick is top 8 protected. It's been going down every year. It was originally like lottery protected, then it was top 12 protected, top 10, and now it's down to top 8, I believe. And all the word, because people are not dummies, and you can just look at the NBA mock draft and say, oh crap, there's a lot of good players, is that the Wizards are like, we need to make sure that pick does not go to the New York Knicks in this loaded NBA draft. So even if it means, okay, we like, what's the big deal about getting the 9th or 10th pick? In this draft, again, it matters. And the Wizards in no way want to lose an asset like a first-round pick for a team that is suffering as poorly as they've been this year. So they have done something that is new, is they made 2 trades. One for Trae Young, one for Anthony Davis. 2 players that in theory, like, oh, if they were healthy to give it a go, like, those guys could help you win games. Those guys could, they're so bad they might not make the playoffs, but like you could turn things around and all of a sudden maybe you're a respectable team going into next year. They've said those guys aren't seeing the court, essentially. Like, Trae Young has some kind of like MCL / groin / whatever kind of injury that he's been dealing with since the beginning of the season. He came back, was playing for the Hawks. Then he was about to get traded, so he was shut down. And then got traded, and that team was like, yeah, he's still injured, so we're not going to play him. It's like, okay. He was just playing a couple weeks ago, and then he was shut down because he was going to get traded. And then he shows up, and he's still injured? What? So that seemed okay. And then he traded for Anthony Davis, and same thing. Anthony Davis, you heard all that reporting. We heard his tweets. Remember when Shams Charania was saying, oh, he's going to have surgery, and his hand is all messed up, and he can't play the rest of the year, and Anthony Davis tweeted lies in all capital letters. Like, he was so upset about this notion that he was going to be shut down by the Dallas Mavericks that he was taking to social media to attack Shams Charania. So we know that he thinks he's healthy enough to play. And he gets to the Wizards, and then what do you hear? We're not expecting him to play. He's got this hand injury. He can't go, so he's done. And you're like, all right, so you've traded now all these players. Not that you've traded studs, right? They're the Wizards. But, like, you traded C.J. McCollum, you traded Corey Kispert, you trade some of these guys that were somewhat reliable guys, and you get back players who aren't playing. They're not even taking the court, regardless of whether or not those guys were good or bad. Like, you're getting back nothing in return for this year. You're just losing guys. It has led people to be like, yo, what's going on? Like, this is really bad, right? Like, how do you have a team that's now making trades for people who can play healthy and who can play and they're healthy? And in theory, like, it would be cool to go to a Washington Wizards game. All right, Trae Young and Anthony Davis are out there. Like, you get competitive games having the better players on the court. And the Wizards are saying, over our dead bodies, we don't want to lose our draft picks, so those guys are going to sit. And it's stupid. I think it's awful for the NBA. And then on the flip side, we have teams making trades to hopefully get better for next season. Because the Wizards think that, next year they're not going to tank. They're going to hope that with Trae Young and Anthony Davis, the next year they can compete for a playoff spot. Same thing with the Utah Jazz. They trade for Jaren Jackson, a team that, at theory, they should be tanking. But you're like, hey, we have an opportunity to get Jaren Jackson, and we've been tanking for all these years. Like, maybe we should take that opportunity. But they're not going to just quit tanking. No. They're going to bring in Jaren Jackson, who's able-bodied and can play and is healthy, and put him out there. And they played a game over the weekend where him and Larry Markkinen were putting in work as a duo. And you're like, okay, this looks pretty good. Jazz are playing well. Like, let's see how this is going to be the rest of the way. And benched them for the whole fourth quarter. Just said, all right, those guys are done. We're going to play some young guys here and see how that goes. And of course, they end up losing that game, right? So now you have teams that are also getting players who can play, and then they're just playing them limited minutes or playing them not in crunch time and putting them on the bench, and it's also effectively tanking. So according to Brian Windhorst, this has gotten the attention of the NBA and the competition committee, and they're not very happy with it. I'll read you what he wrote here, where he said, let me just put this here real quick. Competition committee. He said, needless to say, there's some irritation within the league. Even if the flip strategy has some intellectual merit. That flip being, flip players in order to, bring in a guy to get ready for next year. The topic of these long-range, non-competitive maneuvers was raised at a NBA competition committee meeting recently. You also had like the Hornets taking on Kobe White, who then was injured. So it was like, what's the point of taking a guy who's injured right now? But they're in a situation where they also may feel like, hey, we tank, it's okay, and we like Kobe White, so when he's healthy, we'll bring him on the team, and we'll want to try to re-sign him. We want to have his bird rights and all those things. So this is a new age of tanking that has become now more involved. I feel like, one, this does suck, and the NBA should be concerned about it. Two, I feel like, again, there are ways to do this, but the NBA's got to be willing to be more radical. So, number one, next CBA, get rid of protections. I keep saying that. I said that last week. Bart then echoed those sentiments when he came on the show. Get rid of protections. You cannot protect your lottery pick. If you want to trade your first round pick, it's got to be unprotected. And put some real value behind it. The NFL, we don't got protections for draft picks. You trade your first round pick, you better freaking win that year. Otherwise you're going to be screwed. And that's the kind of risk teams should have to take when you're making these massive trades. Not hedging, saying, oh, I want to keep my pick if it's in the top 4, but also if it's in 10 to 15, the Pacers, what are we talking about? This has gotten ridiculous. You got it. If you're going to make a trade, it's unprotected, and your first round pick is gone, and that's all you got to do with it. You want to do swaps, that's fine. I'm fine with swaps as an alternative. That's your only alternative to not completely giving up your first round pick. No more of this, hey, we're going to, do this half measure of, hey, let's, keep our pick, but, let's trade our pick, but let's keep it so that we don't have to give it up immediately. Ridiculous. So I don't want to see that. That's number one. Number two, to me, it should be a simple rule where you can't sit injured players. You can't trade injured players. If your player is injured and he can't play, he can't be traded. Period. Anthony Davis, if it is declared that he can't get on a court, or Trae Young is declared that he can't get on a court, then they cannot be traded. If they are traded and they're able-bodied and healthy, back in the day, and it's still the case, the trades weren't finalized until you actually passed the physical. The guy passes the physical, he's getting his ass on the court. Period. No other conversation. We're not doing this, oh, he passed his physical, but we learned he has a broken foot, so he's not going to play. It's what? Then he didn't pass his physical. Then he wasn't ready to play. You cannot trade for guys as stash pieces for next year. That's not how this works. That's not the spirit of making a trade. So if I'm doing this and I'm doing the NBA and I'm the new commissioner, which I listen, I think I can do a lot better job than Adam Silver. I'm saying no more players being traded that are injured. You also used to be able not be able to cut players who are injured. It's the only reason why John Starks, Knicks legend, right? The only reason why he was a Knick was because he got injured in practice right prior to cut day. He was supposed to get cut. He barely was going to make the team, and he got hurt, so they couldn't cut him. So he had to stay on the team for 3 or 4 weeks. And then when he got out and got healthy, he got to play. He played pretty well, and they kept him on the team. You couldn't cut guys who are hurt. You should be able to trade guys who are hurt. So those are my 2 things. Number 1, get rid of protections. Number 2, you can't cut or trade players. And number 3, what I said before, and I'll say this again, we need to have independent doctors for all NBA teams that are truly the guys that make decisions on whether or not guys get cleared or not. And we were kind of supposed to have that, these new rules that are involved with the guys have to play 65 games. That was supposed to be part of it. And now it's not, or they're not doing their job. I don't know what's going on. But to me, enough. You can't have the Wizards saying, hey, this guy's hurt. Or someone else saying this guy's hurt. No, the NBA has to say, hey, this guy is hurt, is healthy, and he can play. You have to play him. And if there's a dispute, then maybe you go to a third party who can dispute the injury or whatever. But we can't have teams deciding, oh, this guy's quote-unquote hurt, so therefore we're going to go a different direction. No. Not able to do it. We need to fix that. And I think that you put these rules in place, we will do fix that. Again, this is EJ Stewart. 40 days, 40 nights. We're in night number 21. And, last week we talked about the J. Cole album, The Fall Off. It dropped on all DSPs and all platforms, including his own, which is where I bought it, where I was not able to put it on my phone. It's a long story. Maybe we'll get into it with Ray in a second when he comes back. Ray is here. He'll be here shortly, though. He just stepped away. But have not gotten a chance to sit with the album a little bit. And I told you guys when I did my 1+ review, listen review of The Fall Off. It's not just my review of The Fall Off, because you simply can't review The Fall Off or any album, I think, with one listen. I do agree that people kept posting that J. Cole tweet from years and years ago. You can't, one listen reviews of albums is like ruining music. And I think he's kind of right, because there are so many times where I'll go back and listen to albums I haven't listened to in years and be like, I don't remember liking this as much as I do now, or I don't remember hating this as much as I do now. Like, I do think that you guys sit with albums for a while, and there's so many albums that I've listened to over the course of years that have grown on me. But this one particularly, I think, is one that you actually really do have to step back on, because the role that Cole has played in hip-hop as this bar master, essentially, for the last, now, 7 years, it made it easier, I think, to consume some of his more recent albums, like The Off Season and Might Delete Later, where, again, I still don't know if you do a one-listen review, but I think you can kind of get what he was trying to do and understand everything in a weekend or a day, listen to it multiple times, right? This album is very different. It's also nothing that I expected, and I think a lot of people expected. I also knew I didn't mean bad, and I think sometimes the instinct for when we have an album that we are not expecting to be a certain way, we think, oh, this is therefore bad. And I'm like, well, I don't know if it's bad. It is different than what I thought. I want to sit with it for a while to get a feel for it. Because sometimes people think, oh, just music, you should listen to it, it's just fire. And it's like, yeah, in theory, like, that's the case. Like, I tell you, there are certain albums in my life that I'll never forget where I was when I listened to them. I always say that about Good Kid, Mad City. I will never forget where I was when I put on Good Kid, Mad City. I was on my way to school. I was on my way to Hunter College in the Upper East Side, traveling from Bayside, Queens, all the way to Manhattan. And I was like, what am I listening to? This is insane. This is one of the dopest things I've ever heard. And there are a couple albums like that. I also always remember, I never forget where I was when I heard, what's it called? Victory Lap by Nipsey Hussle. There are certain albums that are like that, where even on the first listen, you're like, this is special. I'm never going to forget where I was when this happened. Not everybody's going to be that way. Not every album's going to be that way, but it doesn't mean that those albums are not as good or not good at all or meaningless. So that's why I paused, where I'm like, I don't want to really call this a review of what I did with J. Cole on Friday, because I don't think that I can do a review of this yet. I listened to it more. I think it's a good album. I like a lot of aspects of it. I do feel like there are issues with it that don't allow it to probably reach the hype and the potential that he could have got on this album, which I don't want to say is disappointing, because the more I listen to it, the more I like it. So I can't say disappointing, but I do feel like when I step back from what I was hoping this album was going to be, and then what he executed and what he tried to execute, we all know he's a great rapper. We all know he's a great lyricist. I think that there is sometimes a lack of... I can't say he didn't go out of his comfort zone, because he brings in folk and like country vibes to various different songs, and he's singing on a lot of this stuff. But I think in order to do that, you got to do it well for it to really hit the way I think he would want it to hit. This felt very much like I'm making the songs about stuff I want to talk about. I think the reality, though, as great a storyteller as he is, and I think this is his best album with storytelling, and maybe his best work as a storyteller, his life isn't that interesting anymore. I think part of me is like, it's because I'm older, but no, like we're essentially the same age. Like, and also, like, I found his material interesting when I was in college, is why we like J. Cole. So what is it? I think some of it is we don't want to hear some of the stuff that he was rapping about. So I will get more into what I think of it in a second, but I want to bring in my guy, Ray Jarvis. Last time, we kind of ruffled some feathers last time we came on talking about J. Cole. So I don't know if this is going to happen yet again, but I'm happy to have you on. Ray Jarvis, of course, of the Hip Hop Roundtable, as well as WFAN. Ray, what's happening, man?
What's going on, EJ? We absolutely ruffled some feathers the last time we linked up, so much so that those feathers are still being ruffled as we speak. You know what I mean? So, nevertheless, we got to talk about the album. Very anticipated, The Fall Off. I heard what you had to say. You're a little reticent in giving a full review, but we got to talk about some things, EJ.
We got to. So, like I said, I'll say what I said earlier, and I'll say what I said on Friday. Like, I like this album. I think it's good. I think there are some songs that I gonna be probably some of my favorite J. Cole songs. I love the Villas. I love the joint where he's dissing some random guy in Fayetteville. I forgot what that song is called. I keep forgetting the song. I love that freaking song. There are some songs that I absolutely love, but there are more skips than I would have anticipated. There's a lot more singing than I would have anticipated, and he's not the greatest singer. So when he goes into that bag, it's like you better have backup vocals. You better have production that's on a super high level, like we saw on Saint Tropez and For Whom the Bell Tolls, two of my favorite J. Cole songs where he's singing. And he didn't do that for those. And like I said earlier, I just feel like there are some songs where he tells a story, like the Quick Stop. I think that's one of his best songs. Because I think it's hard to do a song where you're saying, I want to give my fans the opportunity to show how much they love me. So I'm actually going to rap a song from their perspective, basically on my retirement album, saying what they did, what I did for them. It's hard to do that and not come off pretentious, and I don't think he did. So that's also one of my favorite Cole songs. But I think you always run into a problem when you put the story out that I'm working on all these features and all these projects that you've heard to get ready for this album because I need to sharpen my pen. And then you do this album where I'm not saying that it didn't take great writing to do what he did, but it wasn't the wittiest thing that we ever saw from him. It wasn't like he was telling these stories that had these crazy twists, or he was, just barring us to death with all these crazy double entendres and quotables. So it was like, what was the purpose of all these features where you said you had to put in these crazy verses in order to put this project out? If you never did those verses and those albums and those features, I probably would feel like, this is great. I love it. This is cool. It's more J. Cole music. But when you did all that stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's what you prepared for this album, then I get like, we survived the let out. And I'm like, fine. Actually, that song is catchy and it's growing on me. But EJ, what? Why are you jumping on Lil Yachty rapping like you're still back on Hillside Avenue? Like what was the point of that? If that's what we're gonna get to. So I'm very curious about what your thoughts were on the album. Those are my initial thoughts. I like it. I think it's good. Like I said, I think it's more towards the end of better Cole albums. But is it near the top? I can't say that.
That's funny that you say that because at various points of listening to this album, I had questions about like, what is this album even about? You know what I mean? And I know what the rollout is. We know what Disc 29 is, what Disc 30. I know what they told me. I understand that. And you can kind of hear as far as like musically how some of the songs, not in a negative way, but generally it sounds a little bit dated for what rap sounds like right now. You can hear the dichotomy between 29 and 39 as far as the sonics go and the song structure as well. So from that perspective, I get it. But as a listening experience, I'm like, what is this album about? What am I supposed to leave with when I listen to this album? I think the rapping, S tier. Once again, like he rapped his ass off to me on this album. Amazing rapping, very sharp. I think, again, there's no question about how good J. Cole is as a lyricist, and I think that shined throughout the fall off on both discs. He's really good at rapping. But when I listen to the overall musicality, and I got in trouble on Instagram for saying it, but I stand firm, 10 toes. This album is very vanilla to me. And vanilla doesn't mean that it's bad. Vanilla ice cream is amazing. But by yourself, it can be a little one note. And I felt like throughout this album, there weren't any twists and turns as far as the music goes, the instrumentation goes, to where you could be like, yo, like, this album is dope. Like, why did he take it in this direction? Coming off of this song right here, why did the beat switch right here and not right there? Like, and I'm like, this is J. Cole. This is the fall off. This is 24 songs, an hour and 41 minutes of J. Cole, and it's like, you're not taking us anywhere. We went to one place, and granted, that place is a good place. It's an entertaining place, but are there other rooms in this place? Are there levels? You know, there was a spot over on Delancey Street, New York City, where each floor they played different music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt like we just stayed on one floor the whole time. We went to Club Fall Off. We didn't go to the second, third, or fourth floor. We stayed on the first floor, and it was some good tunes. It was some really good tunes. But it's like, you're capable of more. We've heard you do more. And where rap is right now, where the elites are, not everybody else. And that was another accusation that I'm fighting right now. They're saying, "Oh, like you must listen to Lil Uzi Vert, Lil Yachty, or one of these guys." I'm like, no. I've listened to J. Cole's entire career, and I know what he's capable of. I know what the elite artists are capable of. And you look at what Kendrick Lamar did with GNX. I'm only talking about the elites now. What the Clips did, we'll let God sort them out. As far as where they took us, like conceptually, beat selection, song structure, where certain songs are landing on the project, all of these things matter as far as sequencing. That's the word I'm looking for. As far as the sequencing goes, I just think that he left a lot on the plate with this project. It was a very safe project. If you're a J. Cole stan, you love everything about Cole. You got the posters. He's driving around in his old whip. You're gonna go get your project signed.
Yep.
This album is for you. But for the music snobs, I think that he could have accomplished way more with an hour and 40 minutes of J. Cole.
Ray Jarvis joining me from the Hip Hop Roundtable. Or Rap Roundtable, sorry. Why did I say Hip Hop Roundtable? I'm bugging.
I don't know. I was gonna let it be great. I didn't want to cook you on. You know what I mean?
No, you should have cooked me on there. That's terrible. I'm so sorry about that, my brother. The Rap Roundtable, my bad. And of course, WFAN. No, I agree with a lot of those points. What do you think of the strategy to make this more of a storytelling album? Again, that is not in terms of what we've heard from Cole. Again, this has been the fall off era that he described, which included several projects and all these features, all this stuff. That's not what we heard on the off season, or what we heard on Might Delete Later, or we heard from even his verses on Revenge of the Dreamers 3, which was all part of this goal to get to this. Did you like it? Did he execute it well? What did you think of that aspect of it?
And that goes back to my point about his lyrical flexing on his project. Like, to write those stories, to tell front to back and paint pictures as a lyricist, as a rapper, that's a flex to me, because a lot of guys can write bars, punchlines, similes, so on and so forth. But can you tell a story? Can you tell a concise story? That's why I want to make sure that I'm clear and that I'm giving him credit because he said himself, I got to push my pen on this project. And I believe he did with the storytelling. But at the same time, it's like, you're telling a story, and then I gotta be a little petty. You did the Biggie and Pac story, but Nas and Kiss did that almost 30 years ago. Almost the same concept. Right? Then you do the Let Out. You talked about that. You did the whole song about the Let Out, only to then have someone explain the song at the end of the song, whether it was you and they put a little effect on your vocal or whatever the case may be, J. Cole. Why are you explaining the song after the song on the song? So it's just like, listen, man, it's like these are the things that it's kind of annoying, and it's like it kind of takes me out of it. It's just like, all right, we get it. You don't need to explain the concept to us on the concept. Just let the song breathe and move on. And it's just like, if you're gonna go in the storytelling direction, and then you want to paint these kind of expansive pictures, and then you're using, like you talked about, folk music and you're singing and all of that. It's like, all right, if you're gonna do that, Cole, like, this is flat though. You made a great point before I got on about layering the vocals, having some background singers. Like, if you're going for it's supposed to be a very deep listen, that's what I'm gaining from it, then go to Kanye route. When Kanye really wants you to tune into some things, like, he spruces, it's air candy. He spruces up everything around what he's doing to lock you in. Like, if you wanted to go that route, and this was what you were going to do with a double CD, you should have listened to the College Dropout and Late Reg. If this is the route you're going to go, even Graduation to a certain degree, because to me, Graduation sonically is his best work. Like, as far as the sonics, the sounds of the album goes, I think Graduation is his best work. Like, that should have been your inspiration for this route, because to me, your skill set, your lyrical flexing, what you were trying to do with the storytelling, you didn't build a great world as far as the soundscapes go for us to really appreciate where you were trying to take this project. You know, that's I could be wrong and people are going to yell at me about it, but that's how I feel about this album.
Is that in part because J. Cole, and I'm asking the question to you, is limited as a producer? Because I do think that is a conversation that people have had as well when it comes to his beat selection, which he's not selecting beats, he's creating them. And yes, I know he's working with T-Minus and he's working with Elite and he's working with various different people on the project, but he produces every song, essentially. And I think the strongest Cole we have seen, again, has been on these features mostly. And that's him not being able to have any say, really, in the production, per se, other than maybe what they do with his vocals. is that a conversation where maybe like he would have been better off maybe bringing in more producers, more different beats, and letting him focus primarily on the rap and not so much on just the beat selection? Because I think Cole's a pretty good producer. I think he's underrated in that regard, but it does feel like, I think we talk about the lack of dynamic aspects to this album and why flat it is. I think you go to the actual production of it. I think. Yes. I think that's a big part of the issue. No.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the main issue for me. And it's not that the beats are whack per se. It's just that I think that the concepts, the lyrics, and J. Cole himself just deserve something bigger now. I don't want to speak for Cole, but I wonder if he's one of those guys who has like a comfort zone. And it's like, when I make my albums, this is what I want. I don't really want another voice in the room that's like a high-level producer, an industry guy. I got my circle, I got my team, I make my beats, and I cook up, and that's where I'm most comfortable. And I'm wondering if that's who he is, because we all got our quirks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's time. I think like he's if this is to use like a film analogy, he's like the independent filmmaker that needs to stop rejecting Hollywood now. Accept the budget, like you've gone as far as you can as the indie filmmaker. Like now it is time to accept the Hollywood big budget extravaganza. We need that summer blockbuster from J. Cole, and he's very capable. Like if he was a whack rapper who was carried by beats, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Right. But I think he is so good that like it's time now for you to make the album that we actually want from you. Like you said, feature J. Cole. When he ventures off on other people's sounds, he sounds like the best in the world. It's not even like he sounds like one of the best. When he feature Cole is the best rapper in the world, period.
Yep.
That guy. No, and he's unstoppable. And whether he's going commercially, whether he's going up against the Griselda guys, he flourishes in a way that you leave and then there's like think pieces for a week straight of how great J. Cole is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that and I'm like, it's time. Go get you the super producer album. Go get Alchemist. Go get Metro. Go dust off Zaytoven. Go venture off. Link up with some West Coast producers and get Hit Boy on there and just put something together that's dynamic that you deserve as an artist, bro. Like you can do this. Talk to Pharrell and found the Fountain of Youth as a beatmaker. Yeah. Between the last Pusha album and the Clips album, he's found it again. We just heard Stove God and Swiss Beats last week. Welcome to My Garden. Like these producers are there. Like make that album now. Like think about what Mike Delete Later was, considering like how much production he didn't do on Mike Delete Later. You know what I mean? Look how that sounded. I love Mike Delete Later. I think that we don't talk about that project so much because of what happened with 7 Minute Drill. But as a body of work, you can argue it might be number one, top three at worst, in my opinion. And it's just like, yo, you are an all-star. Go perform as one now. Like I said on the Roundtable on Friday, like Kobe's always going to be great. Got the Lakers sweaters on. But without Phil, I don't know if we get the Kobe we got. Like sometimes having that construct of another voice in the room to tell you, why don't you just do it this way? Having Tex Winning there, why don't you do it that way? It's not changing who you are philosophically, but it's just showing you a different way to get to the end goal. And I think it's time for that next Cole project. Get the budget because we know you got it. You ain't poor. Whatever team you got, you are essentially independent, and then you use Universal for your distribution and your licensing. It is time. Pay these producers or find one producer, whether it's Pharrell, even if it's Al. I don't know if like how much the Cole fans will love an Alchemist-driven album. That's why I'm thinking Pharrell. And we've seen a guy like Metro. Metro showing you that I'm not just a trap guy. Like Metro can go anywhere you want to go. Find one of these guys.
I like the idea of like Metro or Hit Boy. I think that those
and we look what Hit did with Benny. And in the middle of the Griselda ascent, that was the most he cosplayed Griselda, but made it sound like early 2000s Rockefeller at the same time with that project, Burden of Proof. Yeah. So I'm looking at
Burden
it like,
of Proof is one of my favorite albums the last 10 years.
Look at what Conway just did on his last project. You Can't Kill God with Bullets. Like he took a sharp left turn from the Griselda method on his last project, and to me, he ended up making his best album of his career. It's time for you to challenge yourself differently if you're J. Cole. That's my opinion. I don't want Ron Gilmore to come get mad at us again. But the truth is, we love rap. We love high-level lyricism. We love high-level musicality. And I think that the last Infinity Stone for Cole is that album that really just like, oh my God, what did I just listen to? When we listened to the Clips album, we turned it off and was like, what was that? And then immediately put it right back on because we had to compute that. Cole don't have that album to me yet. I think that's the one thing missing from his career.
Last thing before I get you out here, Ray. Thanks so much for joining me, Ray Jarvis from the Rap Roundtable and WFAN. I'm really mad about that, brother. I'm so sorry. But
you working too good. That's your problem, man.
I was telling you earlier. This is now my third show because I was on with Bart Winkler today. So now I'm going crazy.
Shout out to Bart, man.
Yeah, shout out to Bart. Shout out to Carlos Ortiz. But we talked about like the next Cole project. Do you think that there is a next Cole project? Because he said he did this with the intention of this being his last album, which is not saying that it's your last album. Saying it's your intention. Do you think this is the last Cole project?
Like in that regard, who retires? Huh? Like they take breaks and then they show back up. Is that Cole's music? You know. So I think there's a theory floating around that he's gonna be reborn sometime in November, 9 months from now, with a new album. So we'll see if that some Cole fan was like, it's gonna be the name of the album is It's a Boy, and it's gonna be J. Cole being reborn as a whole new person. Like this era of his career is over, and he's gonna be reborn as something else. We'll see if that's true. But to me, do I believe he's done? Absolutely not. I think, and we could be wrong. Some guys have left at the top of their game. It does happen from time to time. But in rap, especially now where hip hop is, and it seems like the kind of rap music that you and I like is now being reverted to being the leader in the conversation. Like the trappy guys and melodic guys are finally starting to land in the subdivisions where they're supposed to be. I don't think this would be the right time for Cole to leave because he could drop 3 more albums and he could really change the argument, kind of like having another late career flurry where our ears is in tune and they're open. Drake is out here essentially playing games with him. There's still a lot of competitive rapping, like not beef, but competitive rapping that could take place over the next 3 to 5 years, in my opinion. And retiring now, I don't think that would be the smartest play.
Ray, from the Rap Roundtable, WFAN, we got to get you on again soon. You got to run, you got to go and talk about all this stuff going down.
The NBA season is going crazy now. Playoffs is coming. We got to argue about some hoop now, EJ.
I know. We got to make this trifecta. Ray Jarvis and the Rap Roundtable. Make sure you check that on YouTube and the podcast. Make sure you follow Ray. Ray, let people tell you where they can follow you real quick.
Follow me on Instagram or at Instagram and Twitter, JarvTGA. Follow the Rap Roundtable everywhere on social media. In fact, as soon as EJ's done, what is this, day 24 or something like that?
21. 21, day KG.
As soon as day 21 is done, come down the block to the Rap Roundtable. We're going to go live a little after 8. We're going to have a couple of guests on there, lock in. You know what I mean? And just continue to build with us. We are chasing really large goals, but with y'all help, we can absolutely do that. So pull up, get familiar with us.
That's Ray Jarvis. Ray, thank you, man. See you soon.
Appreciate you, man.
All righty, man. That was awesome. Awesome stuff from my guy, Ray Jarvis. Always bringing it. I know limited timing because of stuff with him, and then I had to get him on, and I was already in the middle of a thing on what I was talking about, so I didn't want to just jump out the window there. But I want to get some comments in the comment section. We got my man Jesse Flowens, who I love, always brings good perspective, and also a loyal watcher. Says, it's music, man. We all interpret it differently. I personally enjoyed the beats, like Safety goes hard for a jazzy beat. To me, it was refreshing. Yeah, now I want to make this disclaimer. I want to be clear about this. Because I know there are folks, like, music is super subjective. You could think this is J. Cole's best album and best work and think that these beats were awesome. And, like, more power to you, man. Like, I will, like, in the spirit of just having a conversation, I will debate and argue. But I'm not really in the spirit of arguing or changing your opinion because I think it's art. We're supposed to embrace it for what it is. I think there's too much of this, like, wanting to tear down people's opinions of music or rap or any genre just for the sake of, I think, sometimes not feeling like you're involved. Like, it's one of the things I hate the most. Like, there's so many people that I like that people can't stand. Like, right now, it's not very cool to like Logic as a rapper. I love Logic. I can tell you that I think there were many projects during his quote unquote fall off that I didn't love. That I will tell you right now. But I think that the music he's made since has been excellent, and I think the music prior to that was really good. And if I say I'm a Logic fan, then you get called all these different names, all this crazy stuff, and it's like it gets all personal. It's like it's music, man. It doesn't really matter. It's all your interpretation. It's all your vibe. So I say that to say, Jesse, like you're totally fine with that in terms of his beat selection. Safety was giving me like Tribe Called Quest vibes, which I saw on social media. I think my friend Dexter also sent me that as well. I think that there are certainly some beats that I like, and there's some production on this that's really good. I think overall for me, I just feel like it lacked kind of a dynamic sound, partly because I think Cole's production has always been kind of understated. Like, I think his most ambitious production-wise album is probably Born Sinner. That album sounds differently than almost any other album I think he has put out. A lot of the other Cole albums they have a Cole sound, I think, that you can expect and anticipate. I think this album, it sometimes doesn't even fall in that regard, because again, there's a lot of throwback sound, like I mentioned with a song like Safety. Then again, there are a lot of these like folk and country, vibes that he brings to this, which I think is him trying to really embrace being a Carolina boy, which I get it, I understand it, I appreciate it. Again, but I think to Ray's point, which I would agree with, I think if you're going to do that, I think you gotta freaking go for it. And there are times where he does. I thought the beat switch on intro 39 was like him going for it in a major way. There are moments where I think, okay, he's going for it here. But I think for him, I know he really cares about his music production. But I think the way he just views production, I don't think he's looking to overshadow himself as a rapper deep down. He may never even admit that. It may just be subconscious. But I feel like he never really wants to outshine his rapping. Because at the end of the day, yes, he loves making beats. And I've heard him talk about having that first beat machine that he got, that I think his mom helped him pay for. Like, I'm a J. Cole stan, so I know all the stories. But I think deep down, he doesn't ever want to overshadow his rapping with his own production. And that's why he likes being comfortable with working with his producers or the few producers he likes working with. And I think with that sometimes comes a level of, no pun intended, safety with the kind of beats that he may come up with. So it's a weird album because, again, like I don't want to sound so super negative, because I've listened to it over the weekend and actually am liking it a lot more. I really like Poor Thing was the song I'm talking about. That song, first of all, his beat cadence, not his beat cadence, his rap, his cadence, his lyrics, and just like, I think there were times where, I saw Joe Budden mention this, where Cole isn't dynamic enough with his voice sometimes, but when he gets into that mode, like he does in that final verse, when he's like rapping at some random Fayetteville guy who he dislikes and wants to fight on sight, like when he starts putting that little snarl in his voice a little bit, it's kind of like what I heard when he what's the song, the one from Forest Hills Drive, where it's, he talks about being the king. I forgot what song that is, the name of it, pardon me, but like I love that song because like his voice just sounds different. He's coming with a different energy. He's coming with a different vibe. I'm like, ooh, this sounds different. And when Cole brings that, I think it's great. I don't think he does it enough, but that's one of the reasons why I love Poor Thing. I love Bunts Road Blues. That's a song that's growing on me. I think Thames is great on that song. I love Drum and Bass. Might be my favorite song on the entire album. There's, I mentioned the 39 intro. I really love The Villas. The Villas is, again, that's a Mobb Deep sample. It's a great sample. And he samples a lot in this. He tries to sample and tries to play off of other, homages to other rappers, which I love, again. But mentioning Kanye West, I think that's a great point that Ray made. When Kanye West was sampled, not necessarily the rappers, but more like a lot of soul, a lot of disco, a lot of things like that. Like, he is sampling in a way that is bringing, lack of a better word, like a dynamic element to these instrumentals, where I think Cole, sometimes kind of likes to play it safe, so to speak, in terms of like letting the sample do its job and then let his rapping get the rest of the job done. And listen, if you could rap as good as him, I would understand why you'd feel that way. But I think in terms of, if this album was supposed to be him pushing himself to the absolute limit, I think that would have been my critique for it. I think there are some awesome songs. It's funny, I told you guys on Friday that I thought I liked this 39 a lot more than this 29. Now I'm more even, because again, there are songs that are growing on me on this 29 that I didn't like as much as I like more now. I made it kind of a funny like joke, and I was singing, "Oh, we survived the let out." I joke about it. Like, I'm not joking. That song is catchy. Like, I first heard it, I was like, this is not for me. But again, you cannot listen to an album with one listen and say, okay, that's it. And that's the unfortunate thing about music. Like, there was a time where you sat with albums a lot more. But because so much music comes out, and because we have so much access to music through streaming, through DSPs, through MP3s, like, it doesn't allow us to really sit with albums longer than we used to. So that's not me. I don't listen to all these rappers like that. So I sit with albums a lot longer. Like there are a lot of people who listen to this and will never go back to it. Just like, like those people who grew up in like the 90s or the early 2000s where you listen to an album and you kept playing it because it wasn't like there was another song to listen to tomorrow or coming out next week, because this wasn't how music worked. Like that's kind of how my mind is still. So I'll still be with this album next week and the week after that and probably next month until one of these artists that I do like comes out again. So I'm still listening to this album. I'll probably keep listening to it. But like as time went on, I just ended up liking this 29 a lot more. Again, drum and bass is so hard. That's probably my favorite instrumental of this album. And that instrumental is also understated. But again, the understated doesn't mean bad per se. I just think that, again, there were moments where I'm like, okay, where is I'm coming at it with something crazy out of left field. And again, the storytelling I thought was his strongest attribute. It's his best storytelling album, in my opinion. It's his best writing when it comes to story. I just felt like I wish there were more, like there was something more interesting about his story. I kind of mentioned before Dre came on that when Cole would tell stories earlier in his rap career, I'm thinking about Lost Ones, I'm thinking about what's the one on Friday? What's the one on the warm up? Dreams. Those are the two songs I think about as still probably his two best storytelling songs ever. What made those songs, I think, so powerful was the twist about how he approached, and then also Wet Dreams, probably the third in that class, obviously. Probably his most famous storytelling song. But there were twists with where the story was going with those stories, and I felt like with a lot of this album, there really was no twist. That's why I love Quick Stop. I think there is a twist. Like so much of this album is like about his fear of like someone seeing him and eventually getting shot, because that's what happens to rappers and famous people, unfortunately. And I love Quick Stop kind of sets up like, oh shoot, like this maybe will go really bad. Like here's someone who's like yelling, hey, you look familiar, who are you, and whatever. And then he reveals himself as J. Cole, and oh my God, he's a fan. He's again given all of these amazing words about what Cole's music has meant to him throughout his life, which I told you guys on Friday was almost emotional for me, because again, it's very hard to rap like that and not come off pretentious. And it was like, if I could write a song about what J. Cole's music has meant to me, it wouldn't sound exactly like what that guy was saying, because I didn't have some of my friend to get shot. I didn't have, like, whatever. But rapping about his music getting you through hard times and how much he's relatable and all those different things, like, those are the kind of things you would say. And to do it with the passion he had and how, again, different voice inflection, right? Like, it makes these songs more dynamic. And I'm like, okay, there's a twist there. There's a different voice. I like what's happening here. It's just so much of the rest of it, I think to Ray's point, a little vanilla. And I think that was because that was going to make his music most comfortable. Again, I like this album a lot. At some point, I got to do my ranking of what the definitive J. Cole album rankings are. I haven't done it yet, but like my instinct tells me this is closer to the top than it is to the bottom. But it's definitely, to me, probably in the middle. That's how I would see the J. Cole situation. So, nonetheless, man, I really did enjoy that conversation with Ray. I'm going to give a couple more comments in the chat before we continue. Here's another one. So I think Logic should have been the only rap feature on the Fall Off. Shout out to Jesse. He's another Logic fan. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, so here's my other thing. I'm glad you actually mentioned that. Because that was a point I wanted to make to Ray that he probably would have side-eyed me for, because I don't think he loves Logic. Just in couple of, not even like actual conversations I've had with Ray, but just like comments that have been made, which is fine. He's become like a pariah for a lot of folks. The reason why you might like this album so much, Jesse, is I think there are a ton of parallels between this album and Logic's Under Pressure and Logic's No Pressure album. That will sound crazy to a lot of folks who look at J. Cole as one of the rap gods, and Logic has been, again, someone who at one point in time was considered maybe one of the true great up-and-coming rappers, and then social media, and then some of his own decision-making gets him to not be embraced in that way anymore. But nonetheless, a great talent, and still one of my favorite rappers. But if you listen to this album, if you think about the amount of storytelling, you think about safety, a song again where there's like there's this idea of him going back and forth from like voicemails. You think about so much of the sampling and interpolating. I don't know how to say that word, so apologies. But the interpolations of various different hooks and things. He even interpolates the same song that Logic did on No Pressure, where he does Elevators. Logic did the same thing on GP4. There's a lot of things I'm looking at this. I'm like, this looks inspired by those Logic albums. Safety sounds a lot like Under Pressure, the title track. And again, I mentioned interpolations. I mentioned so many of the samples and interpolations for various different rap songs and bringing them into his universe, his world of the Ville, right? Logic does that with Gaithersburg and Western Park with both of those albums. And again, the amount of storytelling that happens, the fact that this is a retirement album, even the way, again, I mentioned a song like Quick Stop, and I think there's a lot of similarities to Amen. There's a lot of parallels. I cannot sit here and tell you that he listened to these albums. I don't know if Cole's listening to Logic like that. I know Logic loves Cole, and that's like one of his rap idols. I don't know if the feeling is reciprocal. I still wish Cole would have given him a real feature. He gave him that like throwaway feature he gave him on Everybody, which is a beautiful verse, by the way. And it's great. Like, it's why Logic still put it on, even though it was like taped on like his phone or whatever. But like, it's basically him rapping from Logic's perspective. So I don't know. It's hard to really tell whatever their relationship actually is. But I actually think there's a ton of parallels for sure. There may even be some inspiration. This album again feels very No Pressure to me, and feels very Under Pressure in certain elements to it. It may be why some people don't like it, to be honest. But I feel like Logic's production, especially on No Pressure, I think was more dynamic and went for it a little bit more than Cole. That's just my honest feel for it, which is why I love No Pressure. I love Under Pressure. I think No Pressure is a great album. The fact that, like, I think only Logic's career and his kind of, like, push toward away from mainstream and what happened and all that, I think that's the only reason why the album didn't get more pub and more praise than it did at the time. It did great in terms of, sales and numbers and stuff, but his rapping is awesome. The production is amazing. The messages are good. Whatever you think of Logic being this, like, corny guy or whatever, he kind of puts a lot of those bars away for that album. He's phenomenal on that album. I feel a lot of vibes for this. That's the feeling I get. I feel a lot of vibes for this J. Cole album in terms of how I feel on it. Also, we got Jesse, when I mentioned the whole thing on Safety sounds like Tribe Called Quest vibes. That, yeah, Tribe was my first love in hip hop, man. Tribe is awesome. I mean, I'm from Queens. I'm the son of a Queens mother who grew up in Cambria Heights. So, best believe Tribe Called Quest was played in my household, and there's a lot of love for Tribe Called Quest. I still listen to Tribe. Tribe's awesome. And if you're going to be inspired by anybody, Tribe's a great place to start. Q-Tip is a great place to start. Like, in terms of production and everything. So I get it. I guess it goes back to kind of what me and Ray talked about, not on here, but just in when we had conversations about Nas's last album he did with DJ Premier. And it's something I heard him say, but then I also talked to him about this, where Nas's rapping is awesome, but Premier sounds like he's stuck in, like, 1989 or 1991, and I can always go back to that time and listen to great artists from that time and love that music. I love Rakim and I love KRS-One. Like, I love the rappers of that era. But if I'm listening to a Nas album now in 2026, I want something that feels more modern than that. If I really wanted to listen to Nas on those kind of beats, I would just listen to Illmatic. And I know that's like a cop-out. I was like, oh, well, like, it's no one, you're never supposed to be inspired by things you were before. I'm not necessarily saying that. But I think there's a way to, like, pay homage to that kind of music or pay homage to that kind of work and make it modernized that Nas didn't do on that new album they just came out with late last year. I don't want to say Cole didn't do it either, but I think some of those things you're talking about, I think about I Used to Love Her, a song I love, by the way, no pun intended, but I Used to Love Her, Safety, like, they're really good songs. He's rapping really well. They're very much throwbacks, and the beats are very much authentic to that time. But he didn't add anything to them. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like he just rapped over all these instrumentals on the freestyles he did a couple weeks ago. And those were some of the best instrumentals of that era from Bad Boy, right? And what was dope about it, I think, was because he was rapping on what were already dope, established stuff. Here, he's trying to recreate, at times, different eras and different genres. And it's just a hard game to play if you don't do it correctly. Not that, and correctly is maybe too strong. It's a hard game to do it. You can do it if you don't do it with adding a twist to it or adding a certain dynamic to it. And I just that was just my vibes on it, man. Again, I do really like this album. I know it probably sounds like I don't, because I've done a lot of critiques, but there are a lot of songs I really like. There's just a little too much singing for me overall. Except if Cole was gonna sing this much, I need backup vocals. I need much bigger production. For Whom the Bell Tolls, I think I could argue is definitely a top 10 J. Cole song. I love that song. It's, I think, his best intro to any album. And it's just him freaking singing. But it's beautiful. And it's only like 1 minute and 30 seconds, which kills me. Because I'm always like, damn it, I wish this was longer. But to be honest, I think that's also him understanding his range, understanding what he could do, right? But he brought in vocals. He brought in backup vocals. He brought in, again, the biggest production on that album is from that song. And like I think he realized and understood the assignment. Same thing with Saint Tropez. Like, that is dynamic live instrumental and backup singers and all those different, like, so like you could be kind of like a bad singer and it still be good. Like, Ja Rule's a terrible singer, but like he's great. He's great because he's on key and he's bringing in vocals and he's got the vibes and he's got great production behind him. So it's great. We all love Ja Rule. Well, I know some people don't love Ja Rule, but you all used to love Ja Rule. You can lie today and say you don't, but you all used to love Ja Rule. We all love Ja Rule. He was not a good singer, but it didn't matter because it was like, it was still good. Cole is not the greatest singer. He's not Drake from that regard. He's not a lot of other rappers who can sing and carry a tune. But it doesn't mean he can't be great, but you still have to do more to it. And I felt like sometimes he felt like he was singing for the sake of just saying, I'm going to do something different. I'm just going to sing here and put some like country vibes behind it because, you know, why not? It's fun. I like country music. I want to do something different. And you need to do something more than just it's fun and it's different. I want there to be purpose behind it. So there's a long thing on my review for the Cole album. Again, there are some stretches where he really gets into a rhythm, I think, in the songs between Safety, Run a Train, Poor Thing. I wasn't as crazy about Legacy, but then I really liked Bunts Road Blues, Who the F Is You, and then the drum and bass. Then Let Out is kind of like a big right turn. I like it, but it's definitely different, right? And then I didn't think that his final tracks on either of these discs were that great. I think he could have ended the first disc on the Let Out, and that would have been fine. With maybe a bizarre ending, but I'm like, cool. That was I didn't expect that, but it kind of made sense. Like, you end the night, and then you end his night of being 29 years old, coming back to Fayetteville, and that's all I would have needed. And then same thing on the disc 39. The intro begins kind of, again, much more eclectic kind of music, folksy kind of music, but then takes a strong right turn, and then I think maybe one of his strongest verses, I think, is in the intro to this. The Fall Off Inevitable is awesome. It was awesome when it was a single. It's awesome now. The Villas, Old Dog, and then that was when I was like, oh shoot, I thought, okay, this is turning into a great album. I was getting really excited. And Life Sentence, I'm getting married this year, so I'm happy he made that song because now I can play it at my wedding and have an excuse to play J. Cole. I know there's always excuse to play J. Cole, but now there's a real excuse to play J. Cole. And then I thought, like, he kind of lost me a little bit on Only You and Man Up Above. I was like, okay, I'm kind of lost. And then he went to I Love Her Again, which I think is a really good, well-executed song. It's a little bit of a throwback, so like it's like, okay, I'm going back in time, but this is good. It's well-executed, and I like it. I go back and forth on how I feel about What If. I originally liked it. I like it less every time I listen to it, but it's still good. Like I said, man, if you're going to try to do Biggie and Pac, you're just putting yourself at a real high level. And Ray mentioned other people have done it. And he mentioned Jadakiss. Like, I was talking about, like, again, Kendrick Lamar just did this last year. And he did it at a level that was super high. And there was a twist. Again, there was something different. He's rapping like Tupac. Wait a minute. He's rapping about these people that Tupac isn't or wouldn't know. But he's rapping from first person. Who are these people he's talking about? And it makes you do research. It makes you want to figure out what he's doing. There's a mystery behind it. Like, there's no mystery behind What If. You know exactly what he's talking about. You know exactly what the story is. And it's good, but where's that extra little thing to kind of like boost it? Kendrick had it, I thought, on Resurrection. I don't know if Cole had that with this. It's a good song, but not great. I love Quick Stop, and Quick Stop's one of the greatest songs he's ever done. But then the same thing. I thought the end of this 39, I thought these were songs, the bonus song, the last song of the album, I thought they were kind of throwaways. I think you could have ended with Quick Stop. I think if he ends, I really honestly feel like if he just ends the first disc on the Let Out and the second disc on Quick Stop, I think I could say this is a great album. And I would say this is one of his greatest albums. I think like they're just, those 4 songs I think are just throwaways in a 24 album song, 24 song album. So man, that's my feeling on the Cole album, man. I know I've talked about it a ton for you guys who have been rocking with me, who maybe don't love hip hop or love music, and hear me talk about sports or Marvel or whatever. I really appreciate you guys still rocking with me. But again, the part of this show, man, is that I want to bring you guys all of me. And as much as I love sports and how I could break down a Knicks loss or talk about a Super Bowl game, I also love music with almost the same amount of love. So I want to make sure I represent that, because I want this to be the most authentic version you have of EJ. When you watch me, you listen to me on the fan. If you listen to me, behind the glass on Maggie and Perloff, you're getting a little sliver. This is my playground where I can kind of give you as much of me as I possibly can here. Shifting gears, let's get back to some sports stuff before we get out of here. Some things I want to clean up. NBA expected to vote on expansion this summer with Las Vegas and Seattle as the current favorites. That is a report. I believe that was the Dallas Morning News, but I could be confusing that with the Mark Cuban story. We'll get to in a second. So apologies, whoever put that out, if I'm wrong. Actually, let me see if I can quickly get the correct, attribution to that. Cause I don't want to screw people over from that. But this was from Brad Townsend. Right, I was right. Dallas Morning News. I know it wasn't crazy. Shout out to Brad Townsend of Dallas Morning News. So that vote's expected to happen this summer. Las Vegas, Seattle, currently the favorites at this point in time. I think expansion is needed. I've said this for a while now. I think we watched the 2021 basketball season and saw guys that were not playing basketball or playing in like other countries or playing in the G League, like stepping into an NBA games and getting triple doubles. Like Lance Stevenson was like not in the NBA. We thought his career was over, and he's able to just like, because of COVID, guys getting sick, they need to add guys to a roster spot, and they bring them up, and the guys getting triple doubles in the NBA games. And there were so many of these guys that were coming up out of nowhere. Guys, again, on the street, coming in and dominating NBA regular season games. And you're like, whoa, there's a lot of talent in this league. And talent that's not in this league. I think there's so much good basketball out there and so many good basketball players now in the world. It's not just here in the States. It's also in Australia. It's also in Europe. It's in Asia now. Like, you definitely can expand to add a couple more teams and not feel like I think you're seeing a super watered down league. I think this is the moment in time. So I'm all for expansion. A lot of people are not say, oh, you're watering down the league. It makes it a lot. And I get that. I always feel like, though, that argument doesn't factor in how good basketball is all throughout the world. There was a time, like in the 90s, like where there essentially was no European league, or there were, but they weren't like nearly as prominent as they are today. And there wasn't leagues in Asia and Australia. Or at least, again, they weren't prominent today. These guys were like basically like glorified pro-am guys who couldn't sniff the NBA. That's not the case now. Basketball is as popular as it's ever been. More people than ever play basketball at a high level. So you're just gonna find players all across the world, all different corners. So when you expand, I think it has to match the quality of basketball and the quantity of good basketball that exists around the world. If you're expanding and basketball is stagnant, there's no point in expanding because there's not good players. There are plenty of good players out there. The other argument is, well, look at some of these trash-ass teams we have in the NBA and say, how are you going to actually expand? They're trash-ass because they're trash-ass on purpose. It's not because, they tried to be good and they're not. If you look at the worst teams in the NBA, okay, the Kings actually tried to be good, to be fair, but the Pelicans aren't trying to be good. The Jazz aren't trying to be good. The Mavericks aren't trying to be good. And now the Grizzlies aren't trying to be good. Those are the teams that are outside the playoffs for the Western Conference. In the East, the Pacers are not trying to be good because they lost their best player and their point guard. The Wizards, we just talked about with tanking. The Nets aren't trying to be good. To be fair, the Bucks were trying to be good, and they fell into this spot, but they stink, right? But it's not this idea that, oh, there's all these terrible teams, like, why are we expanding? It's like, well, no, these teams aren't trying to be good. We need to solve tanking. That has nothing to do with expansion, because there's enough good players. The problem is, it's too top-heavy. Look at the Western Conference and look at the top 8 teams. Like, those teams are all loaded. It's all this great talent, right? Like, it's just, the problem is, like, it's all on certain teams. There are some teams that are just, the Nets and the Wizards are just like, you watch those games, it's like, this doesn't look like the freaking NBA. I think those teams played each other recently. It was like, this is ugly. This is a tough watch. You watch the New Orleans Pelicans, you're like, this doesn't look like the freaking NBA. So there's plenty of good players. It's just, the problem is it's not spread out enough. It's all concentrated on certain teams. It's not like we have super teams per se, but there are a lot of teams that have a lot of depth. Like the Thunder they can play 12 deep and beat people. That's how good they are. The Spurs can play 10, 11 deep and beat people. That's how good they are. Nuggets aren't as deep, but they still can play 9, 10 comfortably and beat people. Rockets, deep. Lakers, deep. T-Wolves, deep. Suns, deep. Warriors, not as deep. But now I'm getting to the end of the playoffs. That's the 8th seed at that point, right? Eastern Conference. I know the Eastern Conference is not that good or whatever, but there's still teams that have depth, even if they're not high-end superstar talent. So I'm all for expansion because I think it's time. I just think basketball's too good, and there's a lot of good players. You can totally bring in new cities, new markets, and there's a business aspect to it that actually does affect the fans in a positive way. So I'm all for expansion. I'll argue people who want to talk about the league, watering down the league and stuff, but I think it's misguided. Seattle and Las Vegas being the favorites. That's not surprising. It will be interesting because it will create a dynamic where some team in the Western Conference, maybe even 2 teams, will have to go to the East because you can't have unbalanced conferences. So I assume New Orleans and probably Memphis go to the Eastern Conference. Maybe it's Memphis and Minnesota. Minnesota's been a Western Conference team the whole time, but they're right smack down in the middle of the country. In theory, they could, of course, be an Eastern Conference team. Someone's going to have to move over, and that's going to add 2 expansion teams to the NBA. You never know who's going to be good or bad at a certain point. I would hope that they lean towards the better team. So I would hope like Minnesota will get moved over. Unfortunately, there's no other, if the choice is New Orleans or Memphis, it's like, yes. Like nothing you can do. They're both terrible. But I would hope maybe Minnesota is one of the teams move over to the East because now you add another pretty good team to the Eastern Conference. They have new ownership. They're spending money. So I think that would make sense. So there's that dynamic. I mean, these are the teams that make sense. I think Vegas obviously has been ready for this. They've been waiting for this. They want to get that NBA team. They got the NFL. They got the NHL. Of course, with the first one, that was the main goal for them was to expand sports, professional sports in the city. NFL was the big infinity stone, but this is, I think, really they got the A's now coming soon. NBA is the last true infinity stone that they've been looking for. So a Vegas team makes sense. It's a huge city. It's a huge market. There's all the bells and whistles that come with Vegas. That being an NBA market, the NBA they actually were the first league to kind of experiment with Vegas. Because remember, they had that horrendous All-Star game that happened over the course of I want to say it was like 06, 07 maybe. But it is All-Star game, and it was just a nightmare. Pac-Man Jones was, he had an issue where he shot up a club, or he got shot. I forgot what the situation was, but he had a situation that wasn't great. There was just all these conversations, all these stories about parties that didn't go well, and it didn't go well. It seemed like Vegas maybe wasn't ready for that at that point in time. But it seems like now they've gotten their ducks in a row on how to be a true sports market, and that makes sense. And then Seattle makes sense. I think Seattle should have never lost an NBA team. What happened to them was utterly ridiculous and bogus. Like, the city loves the Sonics. They weren't good at the time, but that happens to franchises. You get bad after being good. And they were good not that long prior to when they decided to sell the team. Well, they sold the team, obviously, to Clay Bennett, and Clay Bennett decided, I'm leaving. They were good, years before that. Ray Allen was taking them to, the second round of the playoffs. They were a respected team, and they're obviously a historic franchise. The fact that we lost them sucks. It still sucks, and I hate it. So Seattle does make sense as a team that will come back. You revitalize the great, Pacific Northwest. You got Portland. Now you get Seattle back. So now you got 2 major markets in the Pacific Northwest that are now activated with NBA teams. So I think this is good. I think this is overall good. I selfishly would have loved them to consider expansion into Vancouver again. I was a kid, obviously. I was like, when they expanded to Vancouver, I was 5, right? And then they left. It was 2002, I guess. So I'm like 11 or whatever. But Vancouver, from everything I've heard, seems like the coolest city. And there are so many people who have played for the Vancouver Grizzlies, and also players who have traveled to Vancouver, who talk about how much they loved going to Vancouver because of how cool and how beautiful a city it is. They just couldn't find their Vince Carter. Like, they drafted Sharif Abdul-Rahim, who was awesome, but had knee problems and had no help around him, and was just not as good as Vince Carter. And they never found their Vince, and because they never got their Vince, eventually they couldn't really capture the great Pacific Northwest of Canada from that standpoint and capture the vibes, and they weren't viable at that point in time. It made sense when they moved, but it still sucked, and it sucks now because now Vancouver is still awesome. And now you got some great ball players coming out of Vancouver. Like, I know as a Gonzaga Bulldogs fan, I think about Kevin Pangos. I think about so many of the great Vancouver guys that they've gotten from that Vancouver area right across the border. It's now also because of those years of the Grizzlies being there, just like in Toronto, we got now all these awesome players coming out of Toronto because of the Vince Carter years. You also have a pocket of really good players that have come out of Vancouver as well, that have played in the NBA or played high-level D1. So I think they could do basketball again. If they just do it right, I think it could work. It can't be any worse than what's happening with some of these other things, like in New Orleans. I don't want to take teams away from cities. I think we should try to avoid that at all costs. But I mean, what's going on with that? I mean, they seem very uninterested for the most part in that team, and they've been so poorly run. Like, do we need a team in New Orleans at this point? That's a football city, right? Memphis seems to be going backwards, where that's where they went. They went from Vancouver to Memphis, but now Memphis is in a tank mode, and we're kind of wondering where that's going and what the viability of that small market is. It's the smallest market, I think, in the NBA at this point in time. And what is it really adding to the situation? We have teams in the South. We have teams in Atlanta. We have 2 teams in Florida. Do we need another team in Tennessee? Would Nashville make more sense as a city? There's also the aspect that, I know CNA reporters, I don't know how true this is, but, people have talked about some of the high-profile deaths that have happened in that city, and players feeling unsafe living there or whatever. I know a lot of people from Memphis have taken offense to that. There are a lot of people, obviously, live in Memphis, live perfectly fine, and love their hometown, love their city. I don't want to disrespect their city, but that is something that was reported by somebody who knows NBA players and knows how they think. So I do look at that, and I do wonder, man, I think Vancouver would have been a really cool spot. It could have been one of these spots. It's not over. We'll see what ends up happening. I don't want Vancouver over Seattle because Seattle deserves their team back. But if you told me we held off on Vegas for a little while to give Vancouver a team again, it wouldn't kill me. I also am selfish of, like, there are other cities I think that they should also explore. I know they talked about Mexico City. Mexico City apparently is beautiful. Andrea has been there. My fiance, she loves it. Obviously, I talked to my good friend Manny Rodriguez, who's not, his family's not from Mexico City, but he's obviously from Mexico. So I talked to him about Mexico City and just the various different cities in Mexico that are super awesome and super cool, and NBA wants to expand in Latin America. That's probably the spot to go. So I can see that as well. I still wonder why you can't do a team in San Diego. San Diego lost their NFL team, so they're kind of homeless when it comes to having a professional team. And what I've learned is, as a kid, when you're a kid, or whether, and even if you're not a kid, if you're just someone who has what J. Cole calls the Ville mentality, right? Sometimes people have this mentality where they only think about their hometown and they don't think about leaving, and they don't know anything else really about what's out there around the country, around the world. He calls that the Ville mentality, that he had to break, and that he tried to have other people to break so they can see what else is out there outside of his hometown of Fayetteville, North Carolina. If I call this the New York mentality, where I know we are very diverse with a lot of cultures, but maybe you're thinking about what else is. Like, you see San Diego on the map, you see how close it is to LA. I'm thinking, oh, all those folks, they just love everything that's LA, right? They just love, like, the Lakers and the Dodgers and all that stuff. Well, maybe not the Dodgers, they're their own baseball team, but, like, you know what I mean. Like, they love a lot of the Los Angeles team, maybe, USC or whatever. But, like, and I know this because Maggie and Pearl show was on in San Diego, and whenever we talk Chargers, like, they would be riled up and ready to talk about them, but there's so much pain from losing their team. Like, the Chargers leaving, going to LA was not, oh, okay, they're just up down the road. Like, it is like a death. It was a death to the city that they that they left. Like, that was a huge deal. It doesn't matter if they're only 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away. It still hurts. And I'm sure the same way, people will say that same way for, for people in New Jersey who love the Brooklyn Nets, who love the New Jersey Nets, who now they see in Brooklyn. It's like they're there, but it's not the same. I know there are two Los Angeles teams. I think that you could put an NBA team in San Diego, which is a beautiful city. It would attract a lot of NBA players that would want to play there because people would just love to play in San Diego. And you don't have all the hustle and bustle of having to be in Los Angeles. And you add another warm weather city to what is a winter sport where most of the places are cold weather cities. I do wonder if that would have been a good move too. Because Las Vegas during the winter is not warm. It's not freezing, but it's not warm. So for a large part of the season, probably from about late November to around this time, because I was there around Super Bowl a couple years ago, and around this time, it was not like freezing. It was like, mid-60s, I would say. So it's just good, mid-60s, high 50s or whatever. Like, so between like November and now, which is a big chunk of the NBA season, essentially half the season, you're still kind of in coldish weather. It would be great to kind of have another city that is just like weather great the whole season throughout the winter. I think that would attract more players, bring different markets to the situation. So there are a lot of cities that I think are viable as NBA cities besides the Seattle and Las Vegas. Those are being the ones that have been primarily talked about. But I'm all for the fact that they want to expand. I think that would be a good idea. And real quickly, man, before we get out of here, I know I had the Bron Breaker story. I'm going to hold Bron Breaker for tomorrow because I know I'm running a little long. This is more than 2 hours today. And thank you guys for checking me out, by the way. 40 days, 40 nights. Let me put my night 21 thing back up here. Night 21 here of 40 days and 40 nights. Of course, with all these shows streaming live on YouTube, New Generation Media, on X, EJ_Stewart, and on Instagram, ActionEJ. Get some comments here real quick. ChubbyBear_21. I miss Maggie and Perloff. I miss them too. I miss them. I miss the show. It's part of the reason why I want to do this is as a service to our listeners, the Weedos and Coffee Drinkers. I always tell the joke. I used to work in local news. I worked there. I worked at Spectrum News New York 1. There may be some Spectrum News stations wherever you may be listening to the show or watching the show. I know they're in Orlando, they're in Southern California, they're in Wisconsin, they're all over the country now. Shout out to Spectrum News. Loved it there. Love a lot of people that still work there. Friends with a lot of people that still work there. But I left in part to do this, but I always tell folks that like when someone asks me why did you leave local news, I sound like the Joker in The Dark Knight, where like people say, how do you get these scars? He says, you know how I got these scars? And like he says the story like 3 times, but like every story is different, and you realize he's kind of crazy. Who knows what the real story is? Maybe there is no story because he's the Joker. It's beautiful. It's great storytelling. The Dark Knight is a perfect movie. I love it still. But I always tell people that when people ask me why I leave local news, like I kind of sound like the Joker because I could give them 7 different answers. Because there's a lot of reasons why I left, and it's not like there are reasons like, oh, I was so miserable, and like it's not like anything bad per se, but like there were a lot of things I was just thinking about my life, about my career, about the country, about the city, that made me think like this is the time to leave. And when people ask me like, oh, like why are you doing 40 days and 40 nights? I kind of feel the same way. Where you ask me why am I doing this, I can give you 7 different answers. So it's the second answer now of like me feeling like I'm the Joker in the Dark Knight. But a reason why I'm doing this is absolutely for a service, and a thank you for the Wheels of Coffee Drinkers who supported our show, who supported me, who supported Maggie and Pearl and Manny and Bogish. I gotta get Bogish on. Bogish is the last infinity stone of this show. He was on vacation, and he's been doing Nets games. Shout out to Andrew Bogish. He was like, I'm doing another Nets game. I'm like, that's really dope. He also, again, a fan of the Dunkin' commercial, so I appreciate that he supports me, unlike some other folks who did not love the Dunkin' commercial. If you go listen to the Into the Winklerverse from today, where I was going back and forth with Carlos and Bart, I don't think that they were the biggest fans of it. I love the Dunkin' commercial. I know it's AI. I know it's de-aging people. Like, I know all those things. I think that was the point of how ridiculous and over the top and silly it was. I thought it was fun and cool. Some people obviously did not like it. And I'm not an AI guy, by the way. I'm not this guy who's like, oh, I love artificial intelligence. Yeah, like, let's get artificial intelligence, take all of our jobs. Woo, love that. I'm not that kind of person. But I thought for Dunkin' Donuts, this big corporation, and for this commercial, I thought this was fine and funny. That was me. But I say all that to say I'm trying to figure out how I got to that point. But I'm still thinking about how ridiculous that commercial was. But no, I really look at this, and I look at it as a service to the Wheels of Coffee drinkers. And I know that a lot of folks, we left, and some folks may have stayed with what was being broadcasted on Westwood One Sports. Shout out to Westwood One Sports. I know Drake Toll's been doing the morning show. Shout out to him. Some people may have stayed, and they may have felt like, oh, we're going to stay, and this is a good show, and they're enjoying that. And I hope they are. That's awesome. And then there's some folks that, because they tell me, just because I'm getting those messages and getting those tweets back and stuff, being like, I miss you guys. Like, I wish you guys were here. Like, I wish I lost my morning show, and it sucks. And, I also feel that pain for you guys, too. And when I did this, I was like, man, like, I want to give back to those listeners and those people in our YouTube chat and people in our Twitch chat in some way. How do I do that? And I was like, how about I do a show? And let me do a show, and let me try to bring some of the spirit of Maggie and Perloff show, bring my own twist to it for the folks that were listening to that show that became fans of me. Because I know there are a lot of folks who were fans of Pearl, fans of Maggie. But then also became like, my favorite person on the show is Bogish. My favorite person on the show is Manny. And maybe just a few of you said, oh, I really liked EJ on the show. He was one of my favorites. I hope that I could also serve them. Be like, hey, you've missed me, and maybe you don't want to hear me yakking about New York sports with my crazy New York brethren and sisters yelling, talking about the Mets and Yankees, because that's what we do in New York local radio. So if you don't want to hear me doing that on the fan, I get it, because that's not what we necessarily did on Maggie and Perloff show. This is, I hope, to be kind of like more of an influence for that, where you do get some of that feel. So long answer, but shout out to Chubby Bear under 21. I miss Maggie and Perloff as well. Again, I know they've been working towards something. I think that when they finally announce what it is, I think fans will be really excited. But of course, they gotta do that on their own time. They're trying to make sure they get all their ducks in a row. But Perloff, I know, was at the Super Bowl, so check out his content on the Athlon Sports pages and on his own social media. He had interviews with. I saw he was talking to Justin Jefferson. I think he definitely spoke to Kirk Herbstreit, because he had Kirk's dog that I can't remember the dog's name. I know he's super famous. He made a pick for the Super Bowl, which was kind of neat. So Pearl was doing awesome stuff on Super Bowl Radio Row. So I know they're doing well. Maggie's doing well, of course. She's been on SNY doing Baseball Night in New York, which is a great show. Shout out to Sal Licata, the host of that show. Him, a lot of my other friends are on that show. Emmanuel Barbari, now Maggie. So they're doing their thing. And again, they're not going away forever. But yeah, the show was a special ride. And I'm glad people appreciate it. Also, things I mentioned in terms of I'm a big fan of expansion, partly because I think people don't realize how many great players there are out there in the world. He said, yep, lots. Bob Cusser in Nevada says, yes, lots of great basketball players, not many NBA gigs. That's a reality. There are a lot of guys who can play in the NBA. It's just, where are you going to find time? Between the guys that can play and then the players that people are stashing and all the deals, like, this is time. This is the right time to do expansion. Bob in Nevada, he may be a little biased because Las Vegas NBA team would do well. I, again, totally agree. It would do phenomenally well. Right? There's no question about that. They're going to get a team. So it's only a matter if, when, not if. Again, I love Vegas. Any opportunity to go to Vegas, excuse to go to Vegas, I'm in. Vegas has become one of my favorite cities. A lot of people feel very strongly one way or the other. I am one of the people that are thumbs up on Vegas. Some people say, oh, I hate Vegas, all the lights and all the craziness, all the debauchery, whatever. And I'm not your crazy, debauchery, getting into trouble guy. I'm not a gambler. I'm not someone who's into, adult entertainment at the gentleman's club, as they call it. Like, that's not my deal either. So I'm pretty a low-key guy, but what I love about Vegas is I love a good show. You can always see a good show. I love food. It's a great food city. And it's very walkable, which I also love. I love walking. So now, walking in the summer is basically death, so I wouldn't suggest that. But besides that, I think when it comes to other aspects of Vegas, I think it's super awesome. It's one of my favorite cities. So I'm all for the NBA getting the team. But again, I think there are some markets that are kind of being underrated. I think San Diego and Vancouver would be really cool. I think Mexico City also would be really cool to give expansion to a different country. But Vegas, it makes 100% sense as to why they would be a member of potentially what will come up for a new NBA team. So finally, and again, I'm running along, but I want to get this in here. I don't want to save this for tomorrow. We got to talk about this deal going on with Mark Cuban in this story that I still can't believe. So, this was a report. This is another report. I don't remember exactly who it was from. Maybe I can see if I can find this one too. Give the right, proper context. Oh, this was Mark. This was Mark Stein. That one I do remember. Shout out to Mark Stein. So he's reporting that apparently Mark Cuban has gathered some mystery Dallas investors, a group, to perhaps drum up interest in him buying back the Dallas Mavericks. Mind you, this is a franchise that he sold 2 years ago. I think it might be just about 2 years ago. It's a very short amount of time from the time he sold to where we are now with the Dumont family running the show. Patrick Dumont right now is the current team owner. He's been under siege because of what happened with Luka Doncic trade and him allowing Nico Harrison to put that trade in place. And the Dallas team let him have it, right? The Dallas fans let him have it. They were booing Nico nonstop, chanting. It was a very ugly scene in Dallas. It was surprising because we think of Dallas so much with the Dallas Cowboys. And people in Dallas will tell you, like, oh, no, the Mavericks, the Dirk Nowitzki ever changed, like, this city. Like, we are also a basketball city. And I think maybe some skeptics who aren't from Dallas don't really believe them. Like, oh, yeah. Cowboys. We know it's all about Cowboys. And it will always be about the Cowboys. But I think the Luka Doncic thing opened up people's eyes to, oh, my God, this is definitely also a basketball city. Of course, they're going to love the Cowboys the most. It's the most important thing. But this is no longer, like, the Mavs were an afterthought for almost their entire existence. And we know Dirk Nowitzki, his era was important, and it changed the team. Like, they were selling out every night, but it was still unclear, like, how much of an imprint they really had in the city. The Luka Doncic thing showed, okay, this is a very important franchise to this city, and Luka was an extremely important figure to this city. So, I think it changed the dynamic for everything. And the Dumont family has been essentially under siege because of their management and where the team went from being a team that was set up right on a silver platter to be a team that was able to be a perennial playoff team, and they went to the NBA Finals. Now, some of the moves they made were with Dumont obviously running the show. Like, they made those trades for, like, P.J. Washington and Gafford. Like, they made some moves while Dumont was the owner that got them over the hump. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it was just he just gave them a team that was going to the conference finals. They actually made some moves that actually got them to that hump of getting them to the NBA Finals. But then, of course, the Luka Doncic trade happens, and the bottom falls out, and it's toxic over there. And now I think there's a lot of folks who say, man, who knows why this situation went the way it went? Who knows, is this guy going to try to move the team to Vegas? Like, he's going to try to build a casino here because there's all this word about him wanting to build a casino. Like, what's the deal here? Why? He's trying to save money on this and try to make a profit. What's going on here? Why would you trade a franchise player who you drafted in the prime of his career for street clothes? It didn't make any sense. So he's under siege. Mark Cuban, he was the guy that hired Nico Harrison, but he's still involved. I was watching a Mavs team the other night, and I was like, wow, Cuban still sits like front row. I guess maybe he never gave up those seats. But it's just weird. It's like this guy is not the owner anymore, but he's still like sitting there front row at like a random Wednesday night game. Like, I don't know. Then you got something else better to do? Or like, are you still part of the team? Like, what's the deal? That whole part of it is weird. So hearing this, and then thinking about that, when I saw him sitting front row again still, and he's still commenting a lot on the team, he's still talking about the team in many ways, he's definitely, I think, having maybe seller's remorse, which is different than buyer's remorse. I think he's having seller's remorse that, you know what, like, what I was doing was a service to this community that I still really care about. Whether or not I was making money or not, whether or not this was a viable business anymore or not, I was doing a service, and I gave it to people who were not equipped to handle it. And they're going to end up ruining this service to the Dallas community. And I think that he's looking at this and saying, I don't know if I'm going to buy this thing on my own. Like, I don't know if I'm going to spend that kind of bread. But can I get a bunch of other rich people to give me some money? And then I put up a couple millions of dollars. And then as a group, we buy the team. And then I run the show again. Like, does Patrick Dumont really want all this smoke? Like, is he really enjoying himself as an NBA owner at this point in time? Maybe he's having buyer's remorse. I think that's what's happening here. And I think also Cuban understands that I think there was probably some delusional thoughts of like he could be something bigger than an NBA owner. I think he's someone that definitely like thinks highly of himself for sure, and he's someone who definitely thinks of himself as someone that it can be like a big influencer type. So I feel like he's delved into politics more. He's commented on different issues a lot more. I kind of wondered if there was a Mark Cuban Senate race, presidential race, that he was kind of holding as like a backhand trump card, no pun intended, for what he wanted to do once he sold the Mavericks. And I think he's learning that this climate, he doesn't have a shot to do that. He can't be president. I don't think he could also be a senator in Texas, but who knows? I'm not from Texas. But just the tea leaves of like where the politics are, and this is not a politics show, I'll make that very clear. He wasn't going to be no president. He wasn't going to be no senator. He wasn't going to be no governor. That just wasn't going to happen. Not to govern on his values. That wasn't going to happen. So he may be saying, okay, well, I'm not going to do the thing I thought I could do. And now all I do in my off time is just give money to Indiana football. And like, hey, there's no buyer's remorse there. He did a great job there. The money being spent there is doing really well. It's a knife right to the heart of your boy EJ because they beat Miami Hurricanes in the championship game. Things are going great over there, but besides that, you can't just be a college football booster. That's all Mark Cuban's going to do with his life. Again, he's Mark Cuban. I say this with respect. Think about the ego he has. Like, there's no way that he's going to be comfortable with that. So I think he looks at it and say, yo, man, like, I like being the owner. Maybe there were aspects of being an NBA owner that no longer made me want to continue to do it. But maybe under different circumstances, and with me not having to spend so much money and take so much of the brunt of the cost, maybe I'll do it again. Because I know these bozos don't know what they're doing. What I have found fascinating, before I get out of here about this, and just as like the tea leaves just reading social media, which who knows what social media is, I was stunned by a lot of folks that said, over my dead body, do I want Mark Cuban to buy this team back? And that was stunning. I was like, wow. I assumed Mark Cuban had a really high approval rating with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, he pretty much came out immediately and was like, I know I'm technically kind of part of this front office, but I was frozen out of this Luka Doncic thing, and I would not have done this how this was done. He really wiped his hands of it really quickly. But I think a lot of Dallas fans apparently still hold him responsible for hiring Nico Harrison, which is what he did, for selling the team to this owner, which is what he did. And I think a lot of folks looked at that and said, you set up the environment for this team to be what it is now. Now, we have the Cooper flag, and that's awesome. But now we're kind of back at square one, rebuilding with a young franchise player, which is, we did all this already. We did this with Luka Doncic, where we were bad the first year, but he showed this young phenom showed promise, and then we developed him. But now we got to start away from zero. Why don't we just keep Luka Doncic and continue the chance of being a title contender? Like, why are we going backwards to go back up to the same ladder? It's like playing a video game and you're like 3/4 of the way through and you decide, I'm going to go back to level 1. Whoa, why are you going to level 1? Like, we're not right there yet. We didn't win, but we're close. Nah, I want to go to level 1. It's getting a little too easy. Let's go to level 1. I think Dallas Mavericks fans look at me, yo, man, you effed us up. Like, we should never even be in this position. I don't care that we have Cooper Flag. He's great, and he's going to be a great Dallas Maverick. Let's hope these owners don't screw it up. But now we're back at square one, and also, why would I have confidence that they won't screw it up? Like, when you were running the show when we had Luka Doncic, and you are a competent basketball executive, so you set him up for success. We were able to win. We were able to go to the playoffs. Eventually, we were able to get to a conference final. You sold the team, but a lot of the imprint on your team was still there, and they were able to go to the NBA Finals. We know you're competent as a basketball executive. We don't know what these people are. These people let Nico Harrison trade Luka Doncic. So you left us with these idiots. Like, screw you, bro. Like, you screwed us over. And that's what I'm seeing on social media. I'm not saying that this is everybody, but I've seen that reaction. I've seen it not from like one person, like a lot of folks who are, when those posts are getting posted, whether it's from Mark Stein or from other people, aggregators and such, a lot of Dallas Mavericks fans in comments being like, I don't want anything to do with Mark Cuban. He left us. He gave us. He handed us to these monsters, and now look where we are. I think that may be a little short-sighted. Now, I think if the Dumont family is going to sell to anybody, I probably would prefer just anybody else, just new ownership, just new people, new ideas, new vision, whatever. Like Mark Cuban, at the end of the day, like he's been in the NBA a long time. Like, I'm sure there's someone that is newer, someone that has different ideas, different thought, right? Like, you think of Joe Lacob, and he really embraced, like, the embracing of analytics and embracing the 3-point shot and sports science, right? Like, I'm sure there's a next Joe Lacob or next somebody that's going to invest in that way that you probably want over Mark Cuban, who he came in as a new age owner, but we kind of forget now he's kind of like a dinosaur. Like, he kind of was one of the older guard now at this point. So I think to say, oh, we're going to go back to that, I could see maybe we say maybe I was someone different. I was just surprised by the intensity of some of the fans who were like, I do not want this at all. I would hate this. That surprised me only because the Dumonts do seem like a bozos, like a bozo family, and beggars can't be choosers. And if I could just at least get stabilized with Mark Cuban, I would take that over what I have right now. But that was just my thought. This has been a long show, man. We're going 2 hours and 20 minutes. Oh my God, that's super long. And we didn't even get to everything on the show. But this has been a thrill, man. This has been so much fun. Shout out to the people listening, watching the show. One more from my guy, Bob Custer in Nevada. So, EJ, you can build your channel from here and not get rich, maybe, but a good side income. Hey, tell everybody about this YouTube channel. Tell everybody about this show. Gather the folks from the Maggie and Perloff listeners and get them over here, and maybe I can do that. I would definitely appreciate that. If I could stream for my income, I would have no problem doing that. But yeah, no, seriously, you guys have been the best. A lot of comments today, a lot of viewers today. If you can, one way to support the show I always talk about, very important. If you can subscribe to the channel on YouTube, New Generation Media, super important. If you could follow me on X, super important. You can follow me on Instagram, ActionEJ, super important. On X, I'm EJ_Stewart's where you'll find me on X. That's where we stream live. But as well as subscribing to me, subscribing to the channel. Also, if you give a like and thumbs up to these videos. It seems like a small thing, but it actually is a big thing in terms of just getting more attention, more engagement, getting these videos out to more people. By doing that, it's a great help. Also, when I post, I didn't post much the last few weeks because I've been kind of busy with a bunch of other stuff. But I post clips from the show on social media, on our YouTube page. I also post them on our Instagram, my Instagram, on X, my personal X. If you can like those videos as well, comment on those videos as well. That also helps a ton overall with everything. So follow me on X, EJ_Stewart, Instagram, ActionEJ, TikTok, ActionEJ as well. And of course, if you can't watch the show, you can always listen to the podcast. New Generation Podcast Network, NU Generation Podcast Network is where you'll find this podcast. And you can catch that wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. All right. Night 21 is in the books. Thank you guys again so much for checking this episode out. Again, I'll be back tomorrow with day 22. Oh, I had a big announcement. I gotta cut the music. I'm not gonna do this while the music's playing and you guys just are like, what? You gotta end with that? Huge announcement. I mentioned it earlier in the show. And I forgot to mention it. I mentioned it on day 21. So that was this morning. So I had to cut the music. That was funny. I was like, cut the music. I mentioned it on day 21. I had a huge announcement about some guests that are coming up this week. And I said, if you love the Maggie and Perloff show, you're going to want to watch tomorrow. Andrew Perloff will be live on day 22 of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Where's my applause? Andrew Perloff, one half of Maggie and Perloff, will be on the show tomorrow morning. The show starts at 8 a.m. Perloff will be on with me at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you're a fan of the Maggie and Perloff show, and that's how you know me, and that's why you're still here, you saw Maggie a couple weeks ago. Now Andrew Perloff will be joining me 8:30 tomorrow. We're going to talk Super Bowl. We're going to talk what he's been up to. Maybe you'll get another update on where things stand with Maggie and Perloff and their future. We'll talk about it all tomorrow. But tomorrow's going to be an important day. We got Maggie not on the show, but Perloff is going to be on the show. I split them up. You're probably like, what the hell? You can't get them all together. Listen, I will put this out there because I feel like I feel comfortable saying this. We're going to try to have them both on at the same time at some point. And we have 19, 18 more nights to go and days to go. I think we have 39. I'm trying to do the math. 38 more shows to go, or 36, something like that. 36 more shows. We're going to have time to get them on together. We got Maggie on Once Talk Bills. We're going to talk to Perloff and talk about what he did at Super Bowl week and Senior Bowl and all the stuff he's going to have. So Perloff is going to be in the house. Let everybody know. Let the Maggie Perloff fans know. Let the Dan Patrick Show fans know, because there are people who follow Pearl from Dan Patrick Show and then follow the Maggie and Perloff and still follow all the stuff he does. He's the man. He's my friend, and he's a true gem, and I'm so thankful for him and what him and Maggie did for my career, and thankful that he's willing to take this time to jump on the show. So Andrew Perloff will be joining me tomorrow. Show starts at 8 o'clock. He'll be joining me at 8:30 a.m. That's going to be a trip. Who knows what the hell is going to happen when me and Perloff get locked in. You've seen us do shows together when Maggie's been out, and those shows go off the rails. Typically, we're arguing about, the fifth best team in the Eastern Conference 6 minutes in at some point, because that's just where conversations go with us. And now that we don't have Maggie Gray, in the words of wisdom hanging over us, over our shoulder, telling us what's the right thing to do for your show and not delve into why you should buy stock into the Toronto Raptors. Now with that not here, because of course this is my show, who knows what will happen. It will be crazy. It will be fun, and I'm really excited. Andrew Perloff joins me tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Show starts at 8. Be there or be square. Now I can hit the music. Again, thank you guys so much for checking out 40 Days, 40 Nights. I'll be back again tomorrow in the morning. Perloff joins me at 8:30. That'll be a lot of fun. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you follow me on social media. And make sure you have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of your night. This has been a lot of fun. I'm out.